Huh? Yeah. 20 minutes and start. Start. Hello. Good morning to everyone. Can you hear me? Dr. Itambra, can you hear me, please?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You are audible.
So we are just waiting for our DDG, sir. And just few minutes. Few minutes.
Hello.
वो आ जाएंगे सर, आपको एक बार स्टार्ट तो कर लीजिए, लाइव चालू हो गया। Hello. Can you hear me, Dr. Itambra? Shall we start, sir? We are waiting actually for our DDG sir and our Honorable Vice Chancellor. And Dalwai sir already is there.
Itambra madam,
Yes.
आवाज आ रहा है? Smith बोल रहा है.
Yes, Smith. Yes, Smith, I can hear you.
So we are just waiting for a few minutes. So
good morning, everyone. So we'll soon be starting this webinar for 2 days. And we are just waiting for DDG Education and Vice Chancellor, sir. So he has joined us.
Yes, I think now we can start. Our DDG sir has joined. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'll.
Good morning, sir. So good morning, everyone. So we are beginning this 2-day webinar now. I request Dr. R.S. Pundir, Professor and Head and PI of this project, for his welcome address.
Thank you, Dr. Itambra. Good morning to everyone. So all the dignitaries and participants who have joined us, a large number of participants have already joined us and who are likely to join us. Sir, one small information, our Honorable Vice Chancellor, he will be joining shortly. He has left for some urgent meeting. Just few minutes back, he told me this thing. So he'll be shortly joining. And all Dr. Dalwai sir has already joined, sir. And our DDG sir has already joined. So we shall start now. With your permission, we are starting, sir. First of all, I would like to welcome our Honorable Vice Chancellor, though he will be joining in few minutes. He has been the pivot of these projects, always keen in knowing the activities and particularly the progress of each segment under this project, consisting of all research, maybe capacity building programs, even procurement kind of things. And he has instructed all the persons and departments to give or accord the top priority to this project, and this speaks a lot. Sir, we are very thankful, and though he will be joining shortly, so I welcome you, sir. And now I'm happy to say that we are very fortunate that our Honorable DDG Education and National Director of NAHP has joined us in this program's 2 days webinar on farmer producer organization and commodity markets. Sir, we know that you have guided us at some occasions in the past also. Listening you and maybe knowing through your addresses is a very, very important thing for us. And we know the insights from your address, from your interactions are such important things for us to understand the basic intents of the objective or the objective of NAHP-CAAST, as well as the problem related to the implementations, how to solve them, and more importantly, the expectations under this NAHP-CAAST projects. These things we understand from your address. We are very keen, sir, to know more about these things so that we could further improve our this project in line of your expectation, as well as we could make this effectively implemented. Sir, I welcome you to this 2 days webinar as our patron, and truly you are in fact our patron, and there are many other things we have to learn from you, sir, during this project, sir. And next, we know that today we have chief guest, Dr. Ashok Dalwai with us. And he is a man who is a fine blend of bureaucrats and academics. So this is a rare combination. And we feel very privileged when we discuss with you the academic issues as well as other issues. You are our sir mentor to guide us in this project. Sir, apart from many other laurels to your credits and maybe the assignments you have done and the success you have achieved, one very, very important just in 2018 is, which is very much related to this project, I would like to quote. You have been the chairman of the Committee of Doubling Farmers' Income in India. And this committee under your chairmanship has prepared a detailed report. And this has 14 volumes. One of the volume, that is fourth volume, is exclusively on agriculture marketing. And in this volume, sir, agriculture marketing, you have discussed quite in detail this segment on market intelligence. We are not only teaching this book to our students, PG students, particularly to agriculture economics and MBA agribusiness, but we also have studied and we also have been benefited a lot in developing this project, sir. Sir, with these things, we are very keen to listen you and to understand many issues related to this farmer producers organizations, as well as any other issues you deem fit related to this project, prestigious and big project on national agriculture higher education. We are here to note them down and to implement that at our level. And sir, I welcome you from the bottom of my heart on behalf of our university as well as on my own behalf. I also welcome though our NC National Coordinator, Dr. Prabhat Kumar. He sir told us that he is very much busy, and even our DDG sir was very much busy. Sir, we understand your tight schedule, but you have spared the time. This is a great thing for us. My Honorable Vice Chancellor was saying that he'll be joining shortly and he'll be discussing with you a few things, sir. Sir, Dr. Prabhat Kumar will be joining maybe a little later, or he may not be joining. So I welcome my principal and dean, Dr. Vaishi Jhala, who has been associated in this project from the beginning, and he is always interested in its progress of various components of this project. Sir, welcome you to this 2 days webinar in this inaugural function. Dr. Itambra, who is coordinator also, and one very important faculty, and maybe he's hardworking, and more important things are very disciplined and always motivated to do the work well in times without compromising on quality. Itambra, I also welcome you to this webinar. And sir, ultimately and lastly, I welcome all the participants who have shown the great interest in this project, sir, who are joining us from different universities of the countries, apart from our own university. Sir, more than 4,200 students and around 2,300 students, PG students, faculties have already registered in this project. More than 4,200 participants have got registered till yesterday evening. So this shows the interest of the participant and significance of this project. This apart, sir, I will take only, sir, few minutes, 2 to 3 minutes, just to say view briefly and to touch upon 2 issues of this project as well as of this webinar. So this project has completed 1 year already, and we have entered to 2nd years, and the project has focused mainly on 2 aspects: research aspect as well as capacity building programs, apart from other things like infrastructure developments and other things, sir. In the research, our focus is on price forecasting, including the price forecast with the help of ISRO, using the satellite data, and global intelligence, including the quality aspect, which is very, very important in global intelligence to make its use for policymakers, and marketing with particular focus on ENAM to make it successful. And also, sir, we are having one of the objective of this project, research objective on farmer producers organizations and commodity markets. So this today's webinar is a part of this last objectives. This apart, sir, we are having capacity building, a very, very important, equally important segments, capacity building of mainly the PG students and faculty of our university as well as other university staff who are joining us in different programs. So far, we have conducted, sir, more than 12 programs under capacity building programs and 6 webinars during this COVID-19 situation, sir. This is a brief about these things. And as far as this program is concerned, this webinar on farmer producers organizations, commodity markets, sir, our own studies as well as scanning the literature indicates that our farmers are 85% small and marginal. Their their bargaining power is very low. To enhance their bargaining power, as well as to make them realize the economy of scale, there is high need to bring them under the following the theory of collectivism and forming the farmer producers organization so that they can get the benefits. Not only this, sir, the ENAM, contact farming and commodity markets or future markets, their benefits cannot be reaped under these farmers come together in the form of farmer producers organizations, including the cooperatives. And this is not only we, but the literature also says, our studies also says. Sir, we have large number of maybe 8 to 10 learned speakers with us who shall be discussing these all issues over the next 2 days in different their concerned technical session, including our chief guest, Dr. Dalwai Saab. And apart from that, Shri Shiv Kumar is there, Group Head Agriculture and IT Business ITC Limited, and Dr. Supal Singh, the Professor and Chairperson, CMA IM Ahmedabad, Dr. Ramanujallu, Executive Director, Center for Sustainable Agriculture, Sikandrabad, and we, Sunmugam, commodity market experts, Mr. G. Chandrasekhar, economist and senior journalist, Dr. Naveen Pratap Singh, he is a principal scientist and NAHEP, and other faculty member will be joining and delivering the lectures during these 2 days, sir. Sir, there are 2-3 things which I would like to share because our DDG sir is also there, sir. Apart from our satisfactory progress based on the annual review meeting as well as post-procurement meetings, we have to go a long way. There are few challenges also, sir, and I am repeating those challenges. Those challenges may be common for all. One is, sir, we have not made the headway in this foreign exposure visits of our students and faculty members. Though we have done some homework, as well as some challenges are there in conducting the primary database surveys. And we are sure that in the next maybe 2 to 3 months, as the situation gets normal, we'll overcome these 2 situations. The important and most important point rather in this project is, sir, we have a very important, rather excellent team of 26 faculty members drawn from 7 faculties and good research staffs. Apart from our the good supports, rather excellent support from Honorable Vice Chancellor's Office and our DR Office, which reflects from the fact that they have given this direction to all to give the top priority of to these projects. Sir, I also welcome our National Coordinator, Dr. Prabhat. Sir, we welcome you to this webinar. I had requested you to spare a few minutes, sir. So with these things, sir, I once again welcome all the dignitaries and all the participants who have joined us, who are likely to join to this 2 days webinar on farmer producers organizations and commodity markets at AU Anand. Yes. Sir, with these things, sir, I will once again welcome you all. Over to Dr. Itambra for further proceedings.
Thank you so much, sir. Now I request Dr. Prabhat Kumar, National Coordinator NAHEP-CAAST, for his address. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. It is indeed a pleasure for me to be here on such an important event that is on FPOs, and it is a well thought, and we so I just give me just a minute.
Yes, sir.
So it is a well thought actually event, and we had a discussion with Dr. Pundir in a also why not to have one program on FPOs that is actually a demand of the government. So recently we have seen already the guideline has been issued. So before to begin with my few words, actually I joined late, so sorry for that, and I don't know how many people have joined, but in absence also, really it is a great matter of great pride to be here, and very respected and worthy Vice Chancellor of the university, and we have seen it is in a series, I think is the 4th or 5th in the number. We are conducting this webinar on different topics, and very revered and respected Dr. Dalwai Saab, and because we are meeting virtually and frequently nowadays on this particular webinar, and we have seen the type of guidance we have received in the Rahuri, and here also, and in many others, like in Jobner, he was there. So others, my colleagues, I have seen in that particular program, Dr. N.P. Singh and will be there from our NAIP. So, and other Dr. Shiv Kumar, I've seen he's just going to deliver a lecture from the ITC. Really, it is a good assembly because we have called from the policymakers, academicians, industrialists, farmers, students, and from the industry also. So I was going through the PO and the guideline. That is a self-explanatory. I will just finish within 2 minutes with my message. That is a self-explanatory. Why? Because I have seen it's a 10,000, FPOs we have planned, and with the investment in from the government side. I was just seeing it is a 300 farmers are required for the plain, and more than 100 farmers required for the hills. Immediately a thought came in my mind how to decide the hill, because I have served Uttarakhand. Just after resupplying the pages, I come to know immediately that is written in the bold, MSL 1000 will be considered for the hill. Why I'm giving this example? The guideline is itself is a very explanatory and self-explanatory. So here, what I will emphasize with my 2-3 messages from the Dr. Pundir and his team for the FPO. Basically, we have to see what are the problems lying in FPOs for the vitality and the functionality, and moreover the sustainability, and making it is a profit venture. So basically this series we have to find out, and where our need is from this particular center, what type of hand holding is required to the FPOs. Because FPOs, like I am not going into detail, earlier it was a FC, then SSGs, many in NATP also we have promoted. Now the government has come up. So basically many groups are there, and moreover it is basically harvesting over the collectivization. So in collectivization, what are the different problems lying in the FPOs? We have to think. Only one mantra of the FPOs or any group is that how to harvest the power of collectivization. So I was going through the problems. I just marketing skill, that is one of the important problem lying with the FPOs, those who are coming. So being this particularly, especially we have funded for the marketing intelligence and the market study, can be developed such type of module where once the FPOs are formed, we can call them for the 3 days, 4 days, what are the different marketing skills, so that we can strengthen them and imbibe a confidence to go for the capital investment. That is very much important. Until unless we are not having the confidence, FPOs will come. And I'm frankly telling you, I got many calls when the FPOs were about to announce new policy. Sir, what will be the benefit? How much the government will give? What type of subsidy I will get? This collateral money, what is collateral money? Means ultimately, I got a call, suppose the 10 call, 8 were for the getting money from the government. Two were the serious. So how the seriousness index can be increased in the particularly the FPOs, that is our job from the academic side. Another one is a lack of cooperation. It has been observed. People have given in many paper. So lack of cooperation means the behavioral change we need basically. So can be just again one module. Wow, the business, successful people, we can call them, success story we can discuss. That is also important. So that people we must know, they are the 300 people and all are honor. They are all Malik, they are all honor, and their responsibility is not like a leader is having the responsibility that the chairman and the secretary and rest are not responsible. They are responsible, and they are equally, equally going to take the share of the total dividend. So such type of thing, then weak economic status. Many in FPOs, when they are formed, 300 people have gathered, then how to get fund, that is one of the important. I think vices are coming. Then the poor management. On the management side, we have to again go develop something so that management skill we can impart. And absence of common brand. Can we go for the branding? So because the FPOs, good morning, sir.
Good morning,
Dr.
Dr.
Dalwai Saab, sir.
Good
So,
morning. Go ahead.
sir, just because you people have prepared a FPO guideline, I have seen, I was just discussing, it is a self-explanatory and I gave the example also. So
Yes.
what is the role of academia? I was just discussing, and the role of this particular university.
Yes.
So I have talked about 3-4 points like a marketing skill and lack of cooperation. Can we develop such type of module and success story? Because everything is there in the guideline. The thing is that what academicians can do and how they can actually imbibe the confidence so that the power of the collectivization can be harvested. So basic, that is the soul of the FPO, that power we can harness. And sir, the poor management I talked about, how particularly many FPOs, if you see even the geographically, wherever the behavior of business is there, those FPOs are earlier our self-help group have come up, and those where behavior is not there. I'll give you examples, sir. Here, I called my one of the friend. He's a major. He's having more than 100 acre of land. The joint family is there in the Tarai. I called him, why you are not going for the FPOs? You every time blame that the agriculture is not profitable. But I have seen many FPOs in Maharashtra, they are coming well, that organization. Then he told, Prabhat, can you expect one Sardar will join another Sardar? So such type of behavioral changes actually, how we can mobilize by such, it is a duty of the academicians to make call a one FPO, big FPO, and once at the formation stage, what are the do's and don'ts to make a successful venture? So that we have to come up with those modules like a 2 days, 3 days, so that we can sensitize that particular group and we can harness the power of the collective work. And the brand, that is another one of the important thing, and people are going to talk about, because at this juncture I am not going to talk too much about the brand, but branding is very important, and the backward and forward linkages of the product. And basically why this local, now FPO should become a local supply chain, because COVID has given another eye, that global supply chain has been disrupted. So that's why there is a great demand. How they are going to cater the local need vis-a-vis the world need or for the export also. So the local market and local need should be assessed by the FPOs, and they can supply and can develop a confidence for the safe food. That is the need of our. So with these words, sir, because people are eager to listen you and another chief guest. So thank you, and I wish great success to this particular webinar. And I hope that the problems I flared up here with the solutions also, because it's not always to flare up the problems, but solution always. So it's a good, now we are having a lot of experience with the past, like NATP and government like NABARD and SGGs, many group activities, failure and success we are having in our hand. And this particular ambitious plan for 10,000 FPOs and converting agriculture for doubling farmer income, sir, you have been a leader there. I know, and 14 Bellum I have seen the work, voluminous work carried out under your leadership. And I am fortunate enough in the beginning, I have gone through 2-3. So it is a good, sir, and you are here, and I think we can talk about more. That was from my side, from my expectation, from my own center, that is the AU we have funded in the cost, and role of academicians. Thank you very much, and once again, and I wish a great success to this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, sir. Great. And we will take note. We have taken a note of these all points, sir. We will try to implement them at our end. And you are here, sir, to guide us. These very, very important points. Already these volumes are with us. And now, sir, our DD, sir, is already has given some message, and he's having some other meeting also, sir. Dr. Itamra, we may request our DG, sir, for his address first, please.
Thank you, sir.
You may request.
Yes. So with this, now I request Dr. R.C. Agrawal, sir, DDG Education, for his address. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Itamra, and thank you, Dr. Pundir. Honorable Dr. Ashok Dalwai-ji. Good morning, sir. Dr. Pundir, Dr. Vyas is yet to join. So first of all, I would like to be excused that because of more work in this COVID period, we are having more meetings. This is the third meeting since morning. Now 10:30, I have another meeting. 11 o'clock, there is an academic council meeting, IRI. So I have to attend for some time those meetings also. So I am really thankful to this center for coming out very well in a very short time. And I can say that this is the youngest project which we have funded and called to, but still they have come up very well. And especially for this artificial intelligence, just 2 days back, I was reviewing one of our institute, NIAP, National Institute for Agriculture Policy, where it was a 2 days meeting, and now they are changing for this behavioral economics. They are taking many new topics, and I asked them to reorient themselves for the future needs. And one of the important things I spoke to them was that they should have a very close collaboration with this Anand Agriculture University, for which they agreed. And very shortly, we will have a joint meeting, and we will see how best we can incorporate them. I am trying to incorporate Indian Agriculture Statistics Research Institute also for use of data science, for use of artificial intelligence, so that we can have joint collaboration with universities, with ICI institutes and others. So I think that is the way how we can sustain, that is the way how we can move forward. That is the way how we can really enter into the fourth agricultural revolution. And that is the way how we can really get ourselves prepared for any kind of unforeseen events and any kind of technological developments which are coming at a very fast rate now. So for that, we have a lot of challenges. You know, our government priorities. It is not only the doubling farmers' income, it is also the 5 trillion economy. It is also more crops per drop, many other slogans, vocal for local. For all that, we need really very good support for this marketing, very good support for of FUs to achieve all these things. And already a very good direction, very good documents, very good critical analysis has been done by none other than Dr. Ashok Dalwai-ji. We are always thankful to you, sir. And we will see how best we can take the advantage of your expertise in making the linkages between the different universities, which generally work in isolation. So that thing we have to now come out, and we have to see how best we can remove that obstacle. And that is one of our priority. I'm happy to inform you, sir, that we have signed around 125 MOUs with industry, academy at national and international level during this short period. The student placement rates has been increased from 45.57% to 53.29% in a very short time. So more than 10%. It has been increased. Extremely sorry, call from another meeting. So, so that is really because of the good support. Today, sir, we have around 58 universities with our partnering with us, and we have just yesterday I could receive the report from the Ministry of Finance, and they are quite satisfied with the progress. The only thing is that the expenditure is less. I think for which the universities are making now efforts. We are reviewing all these things. But even with the less expenditure because of this COVID and many other reasons, but whatever targets we have fixed, they are being achieved. I think more than 500 webinars have been conducted by these 58 universities in the month of this COVID. So that's again a very good achievement. Then, sir, faculty research effectiveness in terms of H-index also has been increased to 26%. The reduced student inbreeding, which was a major concern to stop the inbreeding, that also has been increased from 21% to 24%. Faculty inbreeding also has been increased from 50 to 54% in this short time. And we are having the AU revenue generation, which was again a major concern. It has been increased by more than 3%. And increase in number of industry-sponsored projects and positions, it has increased from 60 to 82%. So very good figures we have received. And I think the universities like this AAU, and today I had a morning a webinar or a 2 days workshop for this digital agriculture, which is being organized at Parvani. So many things parallelly, concurrently are being organized, and we are seeing that how best we can harness, how can we sustain all these beyond the project period. So my good wishes, I will just see once I am completing my other engagements, I will again join and listen to Dr. Dalwai sir. We will listen to other experts, and we'll keep on joining these 2 days programs because there's a lot to learn from these programs. Especially, sir, as you know, the NIAP has done wonderful work, and there are a lot of policy papers they have come out. But now I have, because these 4 institutes, they are attached to me as a DDG, ISRA, NIAP, CIWA, and NAHEP Hyderabad. So I'm trying to have a very close collaboration among these 4 institutes, and for which all the 4 directors, they are very eager. And then once this NIAP is connected with the computer scientists, I think they can do a lot of good things beyond development of these policy papers. How best they can take advantage of this deep learning, artificial intelligence, how best we can have advantage of this market intelligence with collaboration with this. So all those things now we are trying to collaborate, integrate, and come out with some good things. So I'll not take much time. Thank you very much, sir. And thanks, Dr. Pundir. Thanks everybody for giving the signs. And again, I'm sorry that I'm not able to continue immediately. But later on, after this IERA Academic Council meeting at 11 o'clock completes, maybe by, I don't know what time it will go, I will again try to join. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, very much to spare this much of time. It was great for us. We were knowing about your schedule, sir, already. And sir, we have noted down and be with you, sir, maybe a little later, sir, for your guidance, sir. Thank you, sir, very much. Yes, Dr. Ritamra, now I think we may invite our chief guest, Dalwai sir, also. Over to you, Ritamra.
Thank you so much, sir. It's time now for our chief guest, Dr. Ashok Dalwai, and I feel extremely honored to introduce him before you. He is a renowned bureaucrat, an ardent reader, and an encyclopedia of knowledge. It is such a privilege to have him as the chief guest today. Dr. Dalwai, as a member of Indian Administrative Service of the 1984 batch, served the Odisha cadre. He has joined in different capacities at both field and policy formulation stages in the states of Odisha and Karnataka, and also the government of India. His grassroots level experience from serving in different backward and tribal pockets of Odisha, besides as district collector of Kalahandi in Odisha and Raichur in Karnataka, and in urban management as commissioner of Bangalore City Corporation, bring him close understanding of people's issues in both rural and urban settings. At the senior level, he has served as secretary and principal secretary in the departments of industries, steel, mines, and textiles. besides holding various tenures as chairman and managing director of public sector undertakings, research and academic institutions. He has been serving government of India since 2010. He is one of the initial members of UIDAI team that rolled out biometric-based resident enrollment for Aadhaar. As head of the Technology Center of UIDAI, his role in building a robust technology platform has been well appreciated. Since 2015, he has been with the Ministry of Agriculture of Government of India. He is presently serving as Chief Executive Officer, National Rainfed Area Authority in the rank of Secretary. He has recently also been appointed as the chairman of Commodity Derivatives Advisory Committee by the Securities Exchange Board of India. He has always focused on effective delivery of services and on good governance. Some of the important contributions include the first agriculture policy of the state of Odisha, first textile policy of Karnataka, self-assessment scheme for assessment of property tax in the city of Bangalore, which was subsequently adopted across the country, launch of Swachh Bangalore, a new initiative in solid waste management, participatory irrigation management, so on and so forth. For Government of India, he has drafted the Model Agriculture Produce and Livestock Marketing Promotion and Facilitation Act 2017, Model Contract Farming and Services Act, and guidelines for Grameen rural agricultural markets, GRAMs, etc. He's also leading the initiatives on transforming India's pulse, oilseed, and millet segment. More importantly, as chairman of the Interministerial Committee on Doubling Farmers' Income, he has submitted a 14-volume strategy with specific recommendations to government, which effects a paradigm shift in agriculture by treating it as an enterprise and emphasizes on income security and welfare of the farmers. He has now been tasked to oversee the implementation of the recommended strategies in his capacity as the chairman of the empowered body. He's a student of agriculture science, a postgraduate in agriculture economics and PhD in economics. He has always sustained his interest in academics and research and has published several research papers and written journal articles. He is a lifetime member of Indian Society of Agriculture Economics and Indian Society of Agricultural Marketing and has lectured at several national and international fora. His services are well recognized. Some of the important appreciations that he has garnered include one of the top 10 important persons in the state of Karnataka in Times of India Survey 2002, as distinguished alumnus by UAS Bangalore in 2013, and has been conferred the honorary doctorate by the University of Agricultural Sciences, Dharwad in 2016 for his services to the society in general and agriculture in particular. He's also been conferred with Exemplary Thought Leadership Award by ICE Danfoss 2018 and KKE Memorial Oration by ICAR and DRI for commendable contributions to Indian society and agriculture. Also honorary fellowship by Confederation of Horticultural Association of India and Policy Leadership Award by Indian Council of Food and Agriculture. Such an honor and privilege to introduce you, sir, and I invite you for your keynote address.
Thank you, Dr. Tambra, for your kind words. Respected Dr. R.V. Vyas, the Vice Chancellor of Anand Agriculture University, Dr. R.C. Agarwal, respected DDG Education and National Director of the NAHEP, Dr. Prabhat Kumar, National Director NAHEP-CAAST, Dr. Y.C. Zala, Principal and Dean of the Business Management Institute at the university, the conveners, Dr. R.S. Pundir, Dr. Ritambara Singh, all the co-speakers for the next 2 days, all the staff and student members of the Anand Agricultural University, all the dear participants who have joined these 2 days webinar from different parts of the country, and everyone else whom I may have left out. Good morning to all of you. And first of all, let me thank the respected Vice Chancellor of the Agriculture University for having invited me to be with you for the second time. I was at Anand only in Feb of 2020. So it's a privilege once again to be with you at this juncture. And I must say that the topics chosen for these 2 days webinar are extremely contemporary and relevant for the transformation of agriculture that we are all looking at. It's a very broad topic. It includes commodity markets and farmer producers organizations. Both need to be dealt independently, and simultaneously both are organically linked. So in that context, having brought the two topics together is a good thing that you as organizers have done it. Now, I won't get into the nitty-gritties of these two topics. I would confine myself to share with all of you the contextual and the conceptual underpinnings of these two themes, and let you then go with the other speakers to understand the details. And at the end of the 2 days of webinar, you would be coming up with your own thoughts and a lot of critique and questions, so that you can start working on operationalizing in a more efficient manner the commodity markets of our country and the new initiative of farmer producers organizations. Now, before I go further, I would like all of you to go back to the father of economics, Adam Smith. He, in the 18th century, laid the first principles of economics. And he was very clear that when we talk of economics, we need to talk about the happiness of the people. And there cannot be business without morality. So the two important books that he brought out were Wealth of Nations, and the second one was The Morality of Sentiments. Now, the commodity markets and the farmer producers organizations, in a way, are trying to reconcile the profit motive of the commodity markets with the moral principles that the democratic institutions of FPOs aim at. When Adam Smith spoke about the happiness of people and therefore the happiness of nations in his Wealth of Nations book, what he was advocating was a free market, a free trade. And he believed very strongly that when we allow hassle-free, seamless transactional trade within and between the countries across the continents, we would be helping the people to create wealth. The purpose of starting with this preamble is to tell you that in India, where agriculture is a dominant economic activity, and agriculture influences the livelihood opportunities of a large section of the society, the importance of agriculture cannot be therefore gainsaid. How do we build agriculture production system in such a manner that we are able to transfer incomes to the farmers and everybody else who is associated with it? And we all agree today that if we would like to do that in the modern world, agriculture production system has to be converted into agriculture business. And when we talk of agriculture business, naturally it would include end-to-end. We're not going to compartmentalize agriculture in terms of pre-production, production, and post-production, but we look at all these things in an integrated, organic manner. Now, let's look at what has happened to agriculture in our country. Having suffered a great setback in the 1960s, where we had to depend upon other countries for our own food security, we introduced Green Revolution, and that has been a great success. What has happened over the last 70 years is very stupendous agricultural growth combined with diversification of agriculture production system. Today, India produces nearly 1.2 billion tons of agriculture produce, and it is highly diversified across the segments that constitute agriculture. And when we now talk about agriculture business, naturally, one of the important ingredients is the way our post-production responds to the production that happens. Generally, it is believed that, and it is true by facts too, that we have been focusing too much on food grain. But then, if we would like to transfer incomes to the farmers, then naturally, the post-production response, including the marketing response, has to be differentiated. It has to be differentiated because each of the segments of agriculture and each of the sub-segments within these segments have different nature, primarily in terms of perishability and non-perishability. Now, almost 70% of agriculture GDP today in India comes from horticulture, livestock, dairy, and fishery. It only goes to show that not just the food grains, which contribute about 30%, but other segments deserve equal attention. Now, when we want to do this thing, we must know that we need to make proper investments and develop management practices in terms of post-production, including connectivity to the markets. What we generally see is that in case of non-perishables like cereals and pulses and oilseeds, there is local pickup by the markets for consumption as well as by millers. And since they have a long shelf life, it is also possible for them to be stored and sold at a later date. Unfortunately, in case of perishables like fruits, vegetables, milk, meat, fish, etc., where the holding life is very small, we find problems and then most of it goes waste. So now this brings us to the issue of food loss and waste, or what is in short called as FLW. This is very important from the perspective of converting the produce into money, and that is called monetization. And monetization determines the incomes of the farmers. So let's therefore look at what is the issue of food loss and waste in our country. Now, Food and Agriculture Organization estimates that at the global level, the food loss and waste registered as high as 1.2 billion tons. That means it is equivalent to the total produce of agriculture in our country. And now when we waste 1.2 billion tons, it happens in two ways. It happens as a loss, it happens as a waste. Loss primarily refers to the inability of the system to convey the surpluses of the agriculture to the consumption points. That means before we have reached the consumption centers, there is a loss. And this is because either we're not been able to connect to the market, or we wanted to connect, but we didn't have proper agri-logistics to do so. So this is pre-consumption loss. Now the second waste refers to the consumption, the loss that happens at the consumption level. That means it has reached the consumers, the produce has been monetized at the producer's level, but now the consumers are wasting it in different ways. And that is another kind of waste. Now both essentially result in decomposition, produce a lot of greenhouse gases. And today, if you look at greenhouse gases per se, the highest is produced by China, which stands at 10.7 gigatons equivalent of carbon dioxide. Next is followed by United States that produces 5.7 gigatons. And if you look at India, it is 2.9, and then Russia 2.7. But in between comes the food loss and waste. If you take the food loss and waste of the globe as a country, it stands at 4.7 gigatons, and it is number 3 after China and Russia. Now, why am I talking about the greenhouse gases in this context is that greenhouse gases are produced because of the food loss and waste due to decomposition, and the farmers have invested inputs, including capital, for producing this much. So it's a loss to the farmers. That which could have been converted into money and transferred to farmers, the farmers stand to lose, the economy stands to lose. And more importantly, the ecology stands to lose because the inputs have gone waste without being used. After all, we are in agriculture to produce food, to produce money, to produce employment. Hence, the issue is that all this is happening because we don't have effective market connectivity and we do not have efficient or robust agri-logistics. That is the point that I would like you to remember. Now, when you come to India per se, the food loss and waste, the figures vary. There are different studies that come out with different rate of figures. For example, the Ministry of Food Processing Industries, which commissioned a study through the ICAR CIFET, in the year 2015, CIFET estimated that the loss varied from 4.6% to 15.6%, depending upon the perishability of the commodity. In absolute figure, they found that a high of rupees 93,000 crore was the food wasted, which could have gone as incomes to the farmers. But then another study by NCDC, National Center for Cold Chain Development of our department, in association with Amity International, which studied Uttarakhand, Haryana, and Uttar Pradesh, found that food waste in case of 29 fruits and vegetables was as high as 15% to 29%. That means the figures were much higher. And there are many other studies which give you different figures. But the short point is that substantive quantities of what has been produced on the farms is going waste. And that is not just a criminal waste, but it is a ecological waste. Now, this brings us to the short point that if we would like to improve this situation, what do we do to improve our commodity markets? What do we do to supplement the commodity markets through robust agri-logistics? So I would now take you to the dominant commodity markets of our country for the last about 100 years. Now, and that's called as regulated markets, more popularly called as the APMCs, Agriculture Produce Market Committees, because they have been the dominant markets in our country so far. Now, looking into the history of APMCs, this is more than 100 years old history now. The first regulated market in our country came up in 1876, and that was called as a bearer, food grain market, and cotton regulated market. And thereafter, the most important step was taken based on the recommendations of the Royal Commission on Agriculture in 1928, who asked for regulated markets. And when we got independence in 1947 and in 1951, when we had the count, we had about 265 APMCs. The numbers kept on going. But then thanks to the trigger of the Green Revolution, when more and more surpluses started getting generated, government started investing heavily in APMCs. And by 1981, we had 4,500 approximately APMCs. And then in 2017, we reached a peak of 7,600 APMCs. Of course, they include both principal market yard and the sub-market yards. However, by 2020, there has been a reduction by 1,000 APMCs because a few states like Bihar and Kerala did away with the APMCs. So today we are left with around 6,500 APMCs. Now, the number is important, but it's not all that important. Let's understand the philosophy and the principle of APMC, because that will give you an insight as to what we need to do in the future. When we set up APMCs based on the recommendation of the Royal Commission on Agriculture, and Government of India took it forward in the post-independent history, the premise was that APMCs will allow the buyers, local buyers, to act to the farmers at the APMC mandis. And therefore, the farm produce will find an opportunity to be sold. The purpose was to create short supply chains. We all talk about value chains and supply chains. Under the APMC system, The aim was to build short supply chains so that the farmer producers in the proximity of the farms were able to get their produce and offer it to the local buyers, which then also connected to the next stage terminal markets and agro processors. So this was a good beginning to make. But this was good in the context when India was not producing too much of food. Most of the food was being consumed locally. But then the failure of the APMC system, now looking back, was that they were not able to keep step with the changing demographic situation of the country. India began to urbanize. That means more and more people started going away from the production centers to the urban centers. And then there was demand elsewhere now. It was not just local. In this context, therefore, the APMCs failed to recognize that there was a new demand developing elsewhere, but then they were so restrictive by the act itself that they were preventing the farmers to carry their produce to places where there was demand. So in short, we were not able to connect the production zone to the consumption zone. As you all appreciate, ultimately the price is a function of demand and supply. The fundamentals in the market must operate in a free trade, as Adam Smith was talking about, so that we are able to, through a competitive price discovery, find an equilibrium price on the farmer's produce. But if we have a restrictive practice where farmers cannot go out of the jurisdiction of the notified area, and APMC itself has certain restrictive trade practices on their mandis, obviously the farmers cannot find appropriate price. So that's how the APMCs which failed to integrate the production zone with the consumption zones failed the farmers and the country. So in marketing terms, it's called as failure to integrate market source space. That means Indian market was fragmented into several APMCs, and each APMC was an island by itself, and there was no conveying from the surplus zone to the shortage zones. So this is the story of the APMCs. But then APMCs, if at all, assume that they were efficient and they had been able to do what they are, would that have been sufficient? The point that I would like you to appreciate today is that marketing, all of us keep talking and researching on marketing efficiency. Marketing efficiency is a necessary condition to help the farmers, but it is not a sufficient condition. You may have an efficient system of price discovery, but unless you are able to convey or evacuate the produce from the surplus zones to the demand zones in a safe, secure, and quality manner, such that it is not compromised during the process of transportation storage, we will not be able to find good price for the farmers. And that brings us to the issue of what is the state of agri-logistics in our country. Now, agri-logistics, which caters to both storage and transportation in principle, need to be looked at once again, as I started saying, in a differentiated manner. We can't just talk about storage and transportation for the non-perishable commodities. They are more important for the perishable commodities. Now, in the non-perishable segment, we have the godowns, dry godowns, and warehouses. In our country, by now, we have around 165 million ton capacity of godowns and storage. That means more or less equal. For example, NAHEP studied and said we need about 181 million tons capacity by 2020. We have 165 million tons, almost we are there. But what is more important is whether these storages, are they warehouse compliant? Because the purpose is not just to store the commodity there. The warehouse must enable the farmers to keep them safe and secure and create a credibility in the banking institutions to offer loans against the collateral of the commodities. And the studies show that neither the bankers have that credibility, nor the farmers know about the warehouse receipt system, nor the entire economic system has been able to push this up, though we have been talking about this for donkey's years. So what we really now need to do in terms of storage or warehouse or silos is to ensure that they're well distributed across the country based on district plans for storage. Second, upgrade the quality of the existing storage such that they're recognized as warehouses under the Warehouse Development Regulation Authority. Now let's come to the more important perishables. This is a very sad story in India. When it comes to perishables, whether it is milk or meat or fish or fruits and vegetables, we have not been able to rise up to the occasion. Of course, we did take a very important step in 2005-06. We started making investments through the MIDH, Mission Integrated Development of Horticulture. And we started building cold chains. Unfortunately, our system did not understand that an integrated cold chain is not equivalent to a cold store. An integrated cold chain looks at end-to-end solutions. It first requires a pack house, integrated pack house. Then it requires cold stores. It requires reefer vans or refrigerated vans for transportation. And then, of course, finally, the ripening chambers. Now, if you look at these four important components, pack houses are extremely critical because they help the farmers at the farm gate level or in near proximity to prepare his commodity to go into the cold chain. They have to be sorted out, they have to be cleaned, they have to be graded, pre-cooled. Most important is they have to be preconditioned because you just can't put the commodity that has been harvested into the cold store directly. And therefore, we needed the integrated pack houses. Now, if you look at integrated pack houses, there's a shortage of 99%, as against the estimated about 10,000. Well, we have only around 294. We also have shortage in reefer vans by more than 85%. We have shortage in terms of ripening chambers by more than 91%. What we have sufficient today is only cold stores. Cold stores account for about 35 million ton capacity, which is one of the highest in the world. But then once again, just as we did injustice to the integrated system, within the cold store, we have focused more on storing potatoes and chilies and one or two other commodities. 75% of a cold store actually caters to do these things. And we have failed to look at the differentiated demand based on the diversity of fruits and vegetables, meat, etc. And whatever existing cold stores we have today, 80% is used by horticulture and a balance, a small percentage of pharmaceuticals and meat around 7%. So by and large, horticulture has been using this, but then horticulture has not been able to use it properly because we don't have differentiated integrated cold chains. So we need to look at that stuff. Now, third one, I talked to you about market integration over space, but then what about market integration over time? Because we will not be able to consume everything that we produced within a given season. We need to store it. We need to create longer shelf life. And that calls for processing or agro-processing, which constitutes both non-food and food processing. Within the food processing sector, where do we stand? Food processing helps not just in creating jobs, but it helps in creating the long shelf life for the agriculture produce after it is harvested. Unfortunately, in our country, there too the focus has not been much. As far as food processing is concerned, in 2011-12, it contributed or it generated about rupees 1.41 lakh crore of wealth. In 2017-18, it generated about 1.92 lakh crore, registering a growth rate of about 7.6%. But then if you compare it with what is happening with Western countries and then Asian countries, we are nowhere. We are still at a very nascent stage. If you take the share of food processing industry as a component of the manufacturing value added in our country, we're still at a very, very low level. We're at around 9%. It means that the huge quantum of agriculture produce that our farmers generate is not being utilized properly, either for the consumers or for the economy to create wealth. That is the short point that I would like you to appreciate. So now, if we look at all these things, I analyze for you that the situation is not as good as it should be. But if our aim now is to create wealth for the nation, create incomes for the farmers, and also simultaneously create nutrition for our consumers, and then simultaneously appreciate the needs of our ecology and the society at large, we need absolute new reforms. We need total reforms. We need comprehensive integrated reforms. So now let's move forward and look at what have we done about that. And before I, maybe I'll also talk to you about the commodity exchanges a little later so that you'll be able to appreciate it better. Now let's look at the basket of reforms that the country has recognized and what has happened. Now all of you know that economic liberalization in our country began in the year 1991. It began first with industry delicensing, or remember what's called license and permit Raj. The second generation reforms included the financial sector. Now, as far as agriculture is concerned, which is a primary economic activity, the reforms did not happen immediately in 1991. They started happening sometimes around 2000s. And there have been a number of reforms that have happened thereafter. So let us recount some of those things. The first one, of course, was in 2003, where the shortcoming of the APMCs was recognized. And then we had the Model APMC Act, and then the Model APMC rules in 2007, which were shared with the state government, which did allow for our private sector to come, but it had its own shortcomings. Then we had the amendment to the Essential Commodities Act, whereby a large number of control orders relating to the food grains as well as the oil seed sector were liberalized. That was in 2004-05. Then we had, more importantly, the ban that had existed on the futures trades since about 40 years was lifted. And we also brought about 131 commodities into the fold of the futures trade, allowed creation and establishment of national commodity exchanges. That was a very major step that India took. And then, of course, there were several other reforms which took baby steps, including making investments in warehouses and making investments in cold stores. But the year 2007-08, where the globe saw the financial crisis thanks to fuel and financial downturn, India also was impacted negatively. And India, in a way, went back on various reforms that had been introduced in the agriculture reform sector, including, once again, doing away with the futures trade, for example, once again, putting back the control orders. So it was a step back in 2007-08. But then in 2011-12, once again, the reform initiatives happened. And the first reform initiative was relating to Farmer Producers Organization. Under the RKVY, pilot projects relating to fruits and vegetables and pulses was initiated. 250 FPOs were aimed at, and the SFAC, the Small Farmers Agri-Business Consortium under the Ministry of Agriculture, came out with very comprehensive policy and process guidelines for the FPOs. And the initiative that began then is now beginning to mature. And then the basket reforms in a more robust manner, in a more systematic manner, have actually begun after 2014. And the first reform, of course, was to address the issues relating to the APMCs, to break that island nature, to break that silo nature, to create market integration over space, and take the first step towards one nation, one market. And that was to integrate them virtually on the electronic national agriculture market platform, or in short called ENAM. So ENAM was the first step which actually tried to create one nation, one market, but because there was a restrictive practice under the APMC Act, it had to be mostly confined to the states. However, some baby steps were taken towards that. So that is the first reform, I would say. And that was followed by the Model AP-LMC Act, which addressed the shortcomings of the 2003 APMC Act and shared it to the state government. Then we had the 2018 Model Contract Farming Act. In the 2018, we also had the Grameen agriculture markets as aggregation platforms, where the union budget targeted 22,000 number of grams to be set up in this country as aggregation platforms. During the same 2018, where the farmer producer companies were given exemption under the Income Tax Act up to rupees 100 crore turnover per annum. That was another progressive step that was taken. And then, of course, in the year 2019, we moved forward with the reforms. And what culminated in 2020 is what began in 2019. And we have had 3 very robust ordinances that government has brought out. And one relates to the direct trade. The second one relates to the contract farming as price and quality assurance. And the third one, of course, is to liberalize the control orders relating to food grains and other commodities under the Essential Commodities Act. And all these things, this basket of reforms, wherein the policy environment becomes now free trade oriented, also was supplemented. That second element I was talking about, the agri-logistics. So the Atmanirbhar Bharat, which has announced an investment of rupees 1.65 lakh crore to build backward and forward linkages in the subsectors of agriculture, horticulture, livestock, dairy, fisheries, as also food processing, will actually take these reforms in a more healthy manner. So this is being what has been the reforms. So let me also dwell a little bit about the commodity exchanges, because the commodity markets are as old as civilization. Ever since the first settlement of agriculture began 10,000 years ago, the exchange started happening. But then we had, for many centuries and millennia, we had barter system of economy. We have moved from barter system to spot markets, and from spot markets we have moved to derivatives or futures and forwards. And you know, this barter system existed in our country even as recent as 30 years back. You know, look at that, what started civilization ago existed in our country even a little some decades ago. Notwithstanding that, now when it comes to the derivatives have their own advantages. What has happened in our country? Let's look at. Two fundamental requirements of the derivatives is to discover prices for the farmers. Second, most important, is to help the farmers to negotiate the risks that come from the price fluctuations. If these are the two important indicators, and we have now allowed 131 commodities. In 2015, that was once again more number of commodities were brought in. Interesting part is, while the onboarding of the commodity exchanges started with agriculture commodities, and the base metals and the bullion and the energy commodities were all brought in subsequent to agriculture commodities. The sad story today is, of the total volume of transaction that happens at the commodity exchanges in India, 88% is that of the non-farm sector. The farm sector accounts only for 12%. That only shows that where agriculture stands vis-a-vis the derivatives. Now, when it comes to the derivatives, what we need, we need to ensure whether the derivatives in terms of futures trade, is it having a strong correlation with the spot markets? And unless we are able to have a strong correlation between spot market and the futures trade, then most of it will be for wagering, speculation, as you call it. The farmers at the spot market will not really benefit. So what we need these futures markets or commodity exchanges to do is to establish those joints between themselves and the spot markets, to build delivery mechanisms, to enable the large traders, manufacturers, agro processors to actually buy the commodities. That means physical deliveries. And they must be also able to promote grading, standardization, quality parameters. Unless our commodity exchanges are taking care of these parameters, the spot markets are not going to benefit. And we want the farmers, we want the spot markets to benefit, because that's where ultimately the price discovery and the physical delivery will happen. What has happened in our country? We expect that if the derivatives are strong and efficient, the farmers who are looking at risk management would be able to short hedge. That means they buy a futures contract before the time of sowing and are guaranteed that this is the price that they're going to get after the harvesting is done. And simultaneously, we expect the agro processors and manufacturers who depend on the agriculture produce for their industry are going to long hedge and going to buy and protect themselves against the likely rise in the prices. And somewhere the expectations of low prices, expectation of high prices must meet to ensure optimality for both manufacturers and farmers. But that has not happened in our country. First of all, we find that not more than 2,000 farmers are directly participating in the commodity exchanges. Imagine, of the large number of farmers, very small number are participating. Second, where the farmers participate, they do not stand to benefit. The best case is the guar gum and guar seed case, the scam that happened in Rajasthan with the Rajasthan farmers in 2011-12. While the prices for guar seeds increased from rupees 4,200 per quintal in October 2011 to rupees 46,000 by March 2012, and the guar gum saw a price increase from about 11,000 per quintal to 96,000 per quintal. The farmers did not get more than rupees 4,000. This entire speculated amount, profits went to the traders. The farmers, poor people, had already sold their guar immediately after harvest to the traders, and it was the traders who had been speculating and artificially hiking up the price. And the double whammy for the farmers was when they wanted to now buy seeds for the next season, by then the prices in the markets had gone up and they had to buy seeds at high prices. So we now need to look at commodity exchanges with certain reforms. And the first reform, according to me, is that we can't have just speculation. We need to have hedging, and hedging means that it has to be not cash transaction, cash settlement based transaction. It has to be commodity delivery based transaction. As long as we have commodity delivery on the contracted date at a future date, then I think we'll be able to check this kind of speculative attitudes or attempts. So I would say that in future, as a price risk management, as a price forecasting mechanism, the derivatives do have a role to play. And as has happened in many of the Western countries where they have been able to play an important role only because their farmers are large in number, farmers are large holders. In India, the farmers being small and marginal do not have the ability to engage with the commodity exchanges, because at the derivatives, we have a minimum threshold of the marketable surplus that can be traded. And most of our farmers being small and marginal do not have marketable surplus ratios that they can meet the threshold level. So the answer lies in farmer producers organization. So this takes me to a few thoughts on farmer producers organization before I close my talk. The farmer producers organizations are important because they address a lot of structural weaknesses that farmers as an individual face in our country. A farmer producers organization is defined as any entity that is formed by the producers, for the producers, and is governed by the producers with an aim to pursue one or more of objectives. It is left to the FPO to have any number of objectives. It can be a different kind of legal entity. It can be registered under the Companies Act as a farmer producer company. It can be registered as a society under the Societies Registration Act. It can be registered as a cooperative under the Cooperatives Act of either the Government of India or the state governments. But then they can have different aspects. Let me only tell you that farmers are dispersed. They are as high as 130 million or 13 crore holdings in our country. And then they have to deal with a large number or a fewer number of the downstream players like traders, large number of consumers. And in our country, as you know, consumers are as high as 131 crore. That means 130 million farms are dealing with 131 crore consumers. Now, between this producer and the consumer, where there should be, as far as possible, direct linkage, we have large number of gatekeepers in our country. And these gatekeepers create constrictions for a smooth flow of the commodity from one end to the other end. And these gatekeepers are traders, they could be retailers, wholesalers, they could be manufacturers, they could be of different nature. There could be financiers. So the farmer producers organizations, in an attempt to deal with the consumers, will have to negotiate with the downstream players and create flexibility there. And therefore, farmer producers organizations become important. They become important because the farmers constitute, please understand this, farmers constitute the first step, the foundation, the starting point of a food supply chain. When we want a robust, healthy food supply chain, either domestic or global supply chain, what is the role of the farmers? Today, we know the farmers as measured by the marketing efficiency, nor are they getting competitive price, nor is their share in the consumers rupee fair and transparent. So if we want the farmers as the first step in the food supply chain to benefit, then their bargaining power has to increase. And therefore, strengthening of the farmers or the producers is the basic aim of the farmer producers organization. And we know by examples from across the world that if we are able to bring farmer producers organizations together, we will be able to achieve that. And the policy and the process guidelines 2013 of Ministry of Agriculture very clearly lay down 7 principles. Let me allude to a few of those things. The first important is that it is voluntary and open membership. Any farmer is not to be forced. It is to be voluntarily, by whose own volition he becomes a member. He brings about, and that brings about a horizontal cooperation. Second one, it is to be democratically governed. That means by the farmers themselves through a governance structure that is free and that allows democracy. Third, economic equitability. That's very, very important. Otherwise, as you know, in cooperative societies, one strong farmer tends to overtake the entire stuff. Here, what we want is everybody who holds one share, irrespective of the quantum of share, he has got one vote. So economic equitability is very important. Fourth one is it has to be autonomous. That means there should be no interference by government agencies, as happens to the registrar cooperative societies and the farmer producers cooperatives. The fifth one, there has to be focus on education, training, and information sharing with the members, with the management, with the extension officers, with all others concerned with the farmer producers organization. And the sixth one, it has to be that the FPOs themselves must aim at building horizontal and vertical structures at regional level and at international level, state level. And lastly, very important is that they must look beyond financial performance. They must look at building social capital and trust. So these are the 7 basic principles that alone can actually help us to sustain the farmer producers organization. The point of telling you is this, that FPOs are not just meant for farmers. Let's not get away with the feeling at the end of this today's seminar that FPOs are meant for farmers. Yes, they are meant for farmers because we call them a farmer producers organization. But we need to create what is called a win-win-win-win situation. There are 4 players according to me. First is, of course, the farmer. Second one is the consumer. The third one is the manufacturer, agro-processors and traders and business as a whole. And the fifth one is ecology. Now, farmer producers organization, through efficient production system, through efficient marketing system, through efficient planning based on market demand, they will be able to achieve what is called resource use efficiency. They will be able to connect with the markets better. I'm not going to details how each of them benefits, but then we are going to help the farmers win. We are going to help the consumers win. We're going to help the business people win. We're going to help also the ecology win. So the farmer producers organization therefore have the aim to meet the demands and requirements of all these 4 players. Now, what has happened, if you look at the explanation, I'm coming to the close of my talk. For the next 5 minutes, I'll close. Now, European Union, for example, has been one of the first ones to actually start farmer producers organizations. We started sometimes in 2011, 12, I told you. They started their experiment in 1990s. And by now, large number of European countries have very robust farmer producers organizations. A large number of them recognized and some of them are not recognized. But the experience there shows that they have about 254 FPOs for 1 million holdings. So what does that mean for India? We'll come to that. But what they have shown is that because of the FPOs, The farmers have benefited because they have been getting more prices on the produce than what they were getting in the market with reference to the market. The consumers are getting at a cheaper rate than what they were getting otherwise. And more importantly, is that many of the farmers who are members of this have been able to build what is called as consolidated production system. In a consolidated production system, we are able to increase the volume, enhance the quality, and meet the market demands. Only when there is sufficient volume and sufficient quality would the market actually pick up these things in an efficient manner. And these FPOs in Europe, whether it's France and Poland or any other countries there, have been able to achieve these things. And they have actually gone beyond the financial performance and also build what is called as social capital. So I think we can actually learn a lot from those experiences. But then, now how many FPOs do we require? This is the issue. We, in fact, in our Doubling Farmers Income Committee, we did analyze how many do we require. We also suggested a few numbers, of course, for up to 2022. Now, government, as you know, is aiming at 10,000 FPOs. As per the guidelines, and an average, we will have about 15 to 20 farmer interest groups consisting of 15 to 20 members, and such 50 FIGs make one farmer producers organization. That means around 1,000 hectares, 1,000 farmers. If you want to achieve that 254 already achieved in Europe for 1 million households, agriculture holds, we will require 30,000 plus FPOs to achieve that. But if you look at our own guidelines, 1,000 farmers, 1,000 hectares for one FPO, for 141 million hectares, the simple arithmetic tells us we require 1,41,000 number of farmer producers organizations. Okay, can we aim at 70,000? Can we aim at 50,000 or at least 30,000? Yes, the 10,000 that government has fixed is the first step. If FPOs are answer to the structural weaknesses of our agriculture system, they are a panacea to the farmers' problems and ecological problems, and they are required to create more food processing and generate jobs. Obviously, we can't just limit it to 10,000. It will only remain a pilot then. We need to bring everybody within the cover, under the cover of the FPOs, which only means the point of telling this is all those who are listening to this across the country, and would please keep in mind that you have so much of scope. One generation is not going to be enough for us to build farmer producers organizations, and we have to consistently make that happen. But then we'll be building and destroying. That's what happens many a time. We need to build, we have to sustain them, and that will come from the leadership. Look at Sahyadri, for example, in Nashik, built by a good leader, by good farmers. Today, those grape growers, small and marginal farmers, have beaten Mahindra and Mahindra in the total quantum of exports of grapes in our country. How did this happen? Only because good leadership, sustainable practices, democratic norms. So I think as a university and all the researchers and academics who are sitting and listening today, you have a lot of hypotheses to build as to how to train, how to research, what to advise our farmers to build farmer producers organizations in this country. So there's a lot of work to do. Government has come out with very good policies. Government has come out with very good support system. And we have very knowledgeable people like Mr. Shiv Kumar who have been into this much before what we had done. But what we require today is academics and researchers to go deep into the matter, find out what exactly ails, why is it that we are not able to be together. Sticking together, sustaining the relationship is the most important. So I will stop at this farmer producers organization. Let me close up by saying that there is a very close integration between commodity markets and farmer producers organization and many other things that government is trying to do. What we should be really doing is to build a healthy agriculture value system. An agriculture value system goes beyond supply chains. In supply chain, you're connecting a farm gate to the markets. But in a value system, we're also connecting rivers. That means the market is continuously feeding information to the farmers such that they decide on the production planning based on the market demand. Today, if we want agriculture to become agriculture business, if we want agriculture to become an agri enterprise, it is obvious that there has to be an organic and two-way diffusion of information on a sustainable basis between the farm gates and the markets within country and outside the country. And that will be possible when you have free market, when you have hassle-free environment, when you have competitive environment, not just one, no monopoly at all. There shall not be any monopoly on the direct trade. So when only we create this kind of a free and fair environment for the farmers to sell anywhere, sell anytime they want to. That's what their demand has been. I guess would have achieved our aim. So thank you very much, all of you, for giving me so much of time. And I am sure that the great speakers that you have after this, in the form of Ms. Shivkumar and Mr. Chandrasekhar and Professor Sukhpal and others who are all coming, they will give, I'm sure, great details of each of these aspects in greater dimension. So thank you very much, and good day to you all.
Thank you so much, sir, for a wonderful talk. I would like to welcome Mr. Shiv Kumar, Group Head Agri and IT Businesses, ITC Limited. He has joined us and will be taking up his lecture in a while after this inaugural session. Now I would like to request Dr. Y.C. Jhala, Principal and Dean IABMI, for his closing remarks for this session. Over to you, sir.
Namaskar to all. Sir, in this inaugural functions, our respected Dr. R.V. Vyas, Vice Chancellor, he will join because he is busy in some work. Dr. R.C. Agrawal, DDG, he was present, and I also thanks for him. Dr. Prabhat Kumar, National Coordinator, NAHEP, and our Chief Guest, Dr. Ashok Dalwavi, whom we heard this in topic, recently joined. Mr. Shiv Kumar and other speakers will join in further. Dr. Sukhpal Singh, Ramananjan, Chandrasekhar, Naveen Singh. So first of all, I thank you, Dalwali sir. You have given a very broad pictures of this marketing. You have included all the basket of reforms and this given particularly this commodity markets and these FPOs, the basic idea we given. So in this NAHEP project, this is the major objective as forecastings. And your topic is very important because in forecastings, as you have said, this spot market, then derivative markets, generally in our studies says there's in price discovery or this risk management, generally we have seen that this spot market follows the future market price. So this is very important, and how to, these are some challenges also in FPOs also. As you have said, this is a FPO in all stakeholders. It is a win-win system, management systems. So FPO nowadays is very important in small, when there is a lot of small and marginal farmers, 85% farmers are marginal farmers, and to get the benefit of this economic scales in input marketing as well as output marketing also. In input marketing also, farmer face a lot of problems. So to increase their bargaining capacities, this FPO is very important. So that is why this is included in this project also. We want to study continuous study of FPOs. And we also want to develop one or two ideal FPOs. This will be our try-best. We will try our best for forming these FPOs. So in study also, in these NAHEP projects, this price discovery and these FPO studies, our main aim to increase to help in farmers so that get the remunerative prices. So you have also told so many things of basket of reforms from APMCs to from ENAMs, contract farming, direct farming, logistic, as well as I can add this agriculture credit facility also. We can include in this FPOs also. But to start the FPO is very difficult actually. Effective FPO. You have seen the number is not important, but effective FPO is very important. and it requires dedicated leadership, integrity, honesty, and professional management. So that is why this webinar is organized, that all idea about this FPOs and commodity exchange, our generally this project is higher education study. So PhD and this master degree students can understand then this, and this awareness is very important. Generally, we have seen this commodity exchange also. It is very important, very less awareness in farmers particularly. And our some model and some mathematics also, some model it require for forecasting. So this is a very important thing. And that is why we have organized this webinar. This is our 6th webinar. We have already conducted this 5 webinars successfully. And I hope this will be also successfully. We will conduct this. So again, I thank you all the speakers, and I hope success for this webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Before I extend a warm vote of thanks, I would like to inform the audience that Dr. Dalwai will be here with us for the session of Mr. Siv Kumar. So anyone, if you have the queries to be asked, that we will be taking up later on. Now it's time to extend the vote of thanks, and I would like to first of all extend heartfelt thanks to Dr. R.C. Agrawal, DDG Education and National Director NAHEP, for finding time from his busy schedule and showering useful insights and blessing us. I also like to extend thanks to the Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, for his guidance and leadership. A warm token of thanks goes to you, Dr. Ashok Dalwai, sir, today's chief guest, to accept our invite and delivering the insightful address. I am pretty sure that the audience benefited a lot and is keen to interact with you. Thank you so much, sir. My sincere thanks goes to Dr. Prabhat Kumar, who is National Coordinator NAHEP-CAAST, for always supporting us and willing to join us whenever we ask for his support. So thank you so much, sir. Thank my dean, Dr. Y.C. Jhala, for all support. Thanks to you, Dr. R. Pundir, PI, Professor and Head of this institute. Your guidance, your hard work and enthusiasm is infectious, and with that we are delivering and we'll keep delivering in the future as well. Finally, thanks goes to my entire team, RAs, SRFs, the technical staff, everyone who made this possible. Thank you so much. And finally, to you, the audience, without you, we can't be here. So with you, please stay with us. Thanks for making it happen. Thank you so much. Now, immediately, we will just move on to the technical session. And as I said, today we have Mr. S. Siv Kumar, Group Head, Agri and IT Business, ITC Limited, Mumbai, with us. He oversees agri and IT businesses of the company. He also holds responsibility for ITC Social Investment Program. Additionally, he is chairman of Technico Agri Sciences Limited and vice chairman of ITC Infotech India Limited and its subsidiaries in the UK and USA. He's the topper of class of 1983 from the Institute of Rural Management, IRMA. Mr. Siv Kumar worked with the farmers' cooperatives for 6 years before joining ITC in 1989. He was the divisional chief executive of the agribusiness division from 1996 till 2017, during which the e-Chaupal initiative was developed and executed under his leadership. Mr. Siv Kumar serves on the Advisory Council to the Ministry of Rural Development on National Rural Livelihoods Mission, the Commodity Derivatives Advisory Committee of SEBI, and on the Management Committee of National Agricultural Higher Education Project, NAHEP, of the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare. Earlier, Mr. Siv Kumar has been a member on the boards of NABARD and IRMA. He was also the chairman of the National Agricultural Council of CII, vice chairman of the WEF's Global Agenda Council on Social Innovation, and UN Global Compact's Core Advisory Group to develop sustainable agriculture business principles. With this, I would like to invite you, sir, for your talk. Mrs. Siv Kumar will be delivering the talk on impact of COVID-19 on commodities sector. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Ritambara, and good morning, Dr. Pundir and everyone else who is joining. And it was great to listen to the last half an hour of Dr. Dalwai's talk when I joined. So he painted a great overview of Indian agriculture from many different dimensions. I'll be zooming in, given my topic, to very specific aspect of the impact of COVID-19 on the commodity markets. And then towards the end, I'll try and link up as part of the next steps with the larger picture Dr. Dalwai had painted. So I will split, before I get into that next steps, my remarks into largely two aspects. One is what has happened on the demand side because of COVID, and then what has happened on the supply side at the other end. And within each of these, I will look at the whole impact through 5 different lenses. So that will give you the structure of how one is looking at what has happened to the commodity markets over the last several months that we have seen COVID within India, and a little earlier already that we have seen elsewhere in the world. The most important lens is what happened to the overall consumption on the demand side. You know, the GDP is going to shrink. It's only the extent that one has to see all over the world, and certainly in India. The numbers range from a low of 3% shrinking of GDP to some analysts estimating as high as a double-digit shrinkage. So that's very sizable. So that is obviously going to impact the overall consumption of many items, because obviously the economic implications of income, the discretionary expenditure, and certainly while food is not a discretionary expenditure, but there is going to be sub-segments which will have implications. Within the larger overall consumption and the GDP-linked issues is the very large number of loss of jobs that we have seen soon after the impact of COVID, as many segments came to a standstill. And the estimate is that there are as many as 14 crore jobs that were lost. And it's by no means a small number. And I think what was useful, because a lot of these were in the relatively lower income groups, the buffer stock that was with the government in the form of staples and pulses and other food items that government has enabled through the various schemes is what really helped the country navigate through what would have been an extremely difficult situation for so many people. So this is the first lens, really, that we have a shrinking consumption base, which is partly made use of the buffer stock. The second lens that one would see is what I would call as the lens of channels. The channels through which food or other agri products reached and met the consumption. So if you looked at what came to an immediate halt after COVID is out-of-home consumption. Food service industry obviously came to a halt immediately. It is only recovering, and now we are seeing that some of them have recovered about 10% and some up to 30%. But going out to eat in restaurants or hotels or small cafes or street corner chai shops, I think all of that had come to an immediate halt, and this obviously has certain implications, and different products have different levels of implications because of this, and I'll talk about it in another lens. At the same time, what happened is at-home consumption expanded, because people are now working from home, and out of home has stopped, and therefore it has different implications of what came into a larger demand because of at-home consumption. The other element within channels to some degree is to do with not so much in India, but it has implications for India, is the consumption of biofuels. I could have put it also in the products lens, but I'm just using here because biofuel is a different kind of a channel through which the consumption happens. So all the agricultural raw material that goes into biofuel, because of the halting of transportation, and even when it revived, it is not even half of the earlier consumption of fuels, and consequently that meant demand for products like corn and other byproducts of cane. So some of these had implications. So channels was the second lens. And the third piece, which in some sense is a central piece, is the product lens. This, some of them will also obviously have natural implications on the larger supply bucket that I'll talk at in the latter part. So within products, different products have had different kinds of implications. The most significant impact was on milk. Because of the shutting down of out-of-home consumption, the hotels, restaurants, and cafes, and even the sweet shops, milk consumption dropped quite substantially, and milk prices dropped in some states as much as 25%, and in some other places maybe 15 or 20%. But out of the various products that one has seen on a sustained basis, if there is one commodity that really suffered in terms of lower prices, it was milk. The second, which suffered quite badly of the fall in consumption, is poultry. So not only from out-of-home consumption, but even at-home consumption, people hesitated because of, I think, large part is a certain misapprehensions, I would say, that poultry consumption had come down. And despite a lot of campaigns which are done by the government, by the poultry industry, and health and nutrition experts, it has not revived. And so which consequently had implications on the entire chain that feeds into the poultry industry. The third segment which suffered within this is on the fruits and vegetables. Particularly banana and mango, which were ready for plucking, harvesting, and then moving into the markets. Because of the supply chain disruptions and the perishability nature of these crops, there was an immediate drop in prices. There was also a drop in prices of certain seasonal vegetables, and once again, nearly as much as 25-30%. But that was not as sustained and as it happened to milk. But for the first anywhere 2 to 4 weeks, depending on how quickly the supply chain got back into action, we had a drop in prices there. Another segment which suffered quite badly, and again that is also sustaining even today, is the floriculture. You know, with all the religious places shutting down because of the concerns of crowding, and also for some period, and even now, the export dependence of the floriculture industry, because India does export a fair amount of flowers. We have various floriculture hubs from where this goes, and with the international regular flights not yet resuming, we have the floriculture industry which got deeply impacted. The silver lining to some degree within the various product segments, and that was, I think, quite useful, is the largest of all the crops which are harvested in Rabi. That was wheat, partly because of the immediate resumption of the government buying at MSP, partly also because there is not as much of a perishability concern that immediate disruption of a few weeks is going to have a major impact. Because of these reasons, we have seen wheat, although some pockets prices are lower than MSP, but it's still higher than last year. And therefore, I would say wheat and to some degree oil seeds, which are harvested at this point of time, mustard in Rabi, I think that held ground, and that is the silver lining among the products. So that was the product lens in terms of what happened to different, on aggregate, if you were to see, we would assess that about 12% of the total income, what would have happened without COVID and because of COVID impact on the various streams of income for the farmer. The fourth lens I would use in demand side is the time lens. So there is an immediate time implications as to what happened. I'll come in a bit to the long-term implications of what is happening. So on an immediate basis, we have stockpiling of staples happening because of the lockdown that happened. So obviously people would want to keep food at home, and the demand for things like atta and rice and vegetable oils and all of this, particularly in packaged form, which is on a storable basis, and therefore we have seen a substantial expansion. In fact, as much as 30 to 40% expansion we have seen of some of the staples being piled up at home in the consumer packs. Soon after the staples got stockpiled at homes, we have seen great growth in demand for convenience products. Products like biscuits, which are extremely flexible, products like noodles, which are extremely flexible. We have seen the households filling up stocks, and therefore the supply chains which are feeding, like wheat, that also became extremely handy for dealing with the Rabi crop. The third thing which happened after a month and a half after the lockdown is because after people consumed a lot of staples and the regular convenience products, the craving started. That what was not happening outside. How do we get restaurants at home? How do we have the more exotic food at home? So we have seen, for example, as much as 300% growth of foods like frozen foods. For example, ITC MasterChef, which is as many as 50 different variants of various frozen products, which you just heat and eat, bake and eat, or microwave and eat, including interesting variants like kebabs and the full meals and all of that. That demand has expanded because people said, I want restaurant food experience at home with convenience. Obviously, one doesn't have that ability to get exactly similar kind of taste and the preparation. Therefore, the frozen really expanded. Even frozen vegetables and pulps and all of that. And outside of commodity, as an aside, we have seen enormous amount of consumption of the do-it-yourself videos for food items. The kind of cuisine videos that got consumed at this time. For example, the same noodles with some difference of masalas, how long can you consume? So therefore, we have seen when you produce the EP, do-it-yourself videos of how do you really garnish and make interesting food items. Many of these videos ran into millions of hits. So that's a kind of the craving which happened. As the restaurants and hotels slowly opened up with the unlocking commencing, the takeaways from especially the larger restaurants has started now gaining ground because wherever the consumers are able to trust that this food is cooked with hygiene and packed with hygiene and is getting delivered, or I'll go and pick up. And we are now seeing the food service, which I said came to a grinding halt soon after, has also started reviving, and therefore that is now expanding the demand side. So that is the kind of an immediate and first few months kind of an impact we have seen on the time perspective. On the longer term, we are seeing that slowly the consumers are now doing their own research, getting advice, getting tips, and building consumption of immunity boosting foods. Because now there is a clarity that this virus is not going to go away in a few weeks. We are going to live together with this virus for next several months. Even if vaccines which are effective are invented, we would see that by the time it is mass availability is done, it's a few months away. And therefore, one needs to build immunity to be able to recover even when we are testing positive, if at all. And therefore, one has seen that. And of course, as part of the hygiene factor that I briefly mentioned, one has seen significant expansion of packaged food consumption where consumers have a trust of the hygiene factor. So longer term, we are seeing this as some of the implications. The fifth and the last lens of the demand side, I would pick up as the global geopolitical kind of implications and therefore the trade flows. Soon after the COVID impact, we have seen the exporting countries concerned about their own domestic food security have put restrictions on exports. We have seen rice restrictions from Vietnam, wheat restrictions from Russia and other parts of East Europe, and so on, and which is, of course, after some after a few weeks and some after a few months opened up once they were clear as to what their availability of food in the domestic market is. But this might recur, and therefore the countries are realigning their own food security and global trade flows related decisions. Now, when you see it from importing country perspective, there are certain countries which are very largely import dependent. Countries like Singapore, countries in the Middle East who don't have too much of domestic agriculture. And therefore, these countries are now looking at diversifying the source countries from where they are importing food. Now we are seeing newer opportunities for entering into longer term contracts, much like we have seen IT outsourcing 2 decades ago. We are now seeing food outsourcing opportunities with long-term contracts from some of these countries. So that is the other dimension of what is happening on the demand side. So that's the 5 lenses on the demand side as one bucket. What's happened to overall consumption, what is happening in different channels, what happened to different products, what are the implications at different timelines, and what is happening at a global geopolitical level. So let me now come to the supply side. And similarly, I have 5 lenses listed here also. And since many of these in some perspective are already dealt with on demand side, I'll be briefer in explaining the supply side. And the most crucial, obviously, is the farmer income. While talking about different products, lenses, I talked about it, and our own quick estimate after engaging with farmers across the 27 states where our agribusiness network operates. Our own quick estimate was that an average reduction was about a 12% income for the farmers. And depending on which crops that one was growing, it is slightly different for different sets of farmers. The second implication, second lens within supply side is the disruption of the harvesting operations to the degree it happened on some of the crops, because just as COVID was expanding, we were harvesting the rabi crops and many other seasonal crops in vegetables and cyclical crops in fruits. And partly because of reverse migration from certain states going back into the origin states, there is some level of disruption. There is also, of course, a larger disruption that happened because of unseasonal rains that happened towards the end of the summer. And that meant delay in harvesting in some states, which did not make available harvesters in time for some other states where they were timely in terms of their harvesting, because most of these large value assets like harvesters move from location to location for their capacity utilization, and that created some level of disruption. But interestingly, this reverse migration has also accelerated adoption of farm mechanization in the kharif crops in terms of planting of paddy, and also in particular more direct seeding because of less availability of labor. So all of these were the second order implications on what is happening in the commodity supply chain because of COVID. The third lens is the transport lens and the disruption that happened in supply chain. A lot more initially, and there's a fair amount of recovery by now. There is almost immediate disruption with respect to various lockdowns, and particularly we have seen the long waiting interstate borders, and that created a larger spreads between the prices at destinations and prices at origins. We have seen that while the farmer prices remained low for vegetables and fruits, like I described earlier, but for many of the vegetables and fruits, the prices remain high at the consumer level. And that's because of the transportation disruption, particularly where they have to move across the state borders. A lot of innovation, of course, occurred. For example, with passenger trains coming to a standstill, the railways have been able to move the goods trains extremely fast, and there was no interstate border issue there also. And railways have also worked with industry and have created rakes for smaller parcels, rakes for multiple destinations. Some of these were not possible when there were a lot of passenger trains moving along on the same tracks. So now, in fact, they are now working to create certain routes. How do we make it a more permanent feature? Because the passenger movement may still not come back to normalcy for some time. We also moved, for example, wheat from Gujarat to Tamil Nadu through the sea route. It used to happen for salt a lot more, and occasional wheat shipments we did like that, but now it became a regular channel when the domestic road traffic got disrupted and interstate took a lot of time. So I think that is what happened on the transport side and the price implications because of COVID. The fourth lens within supply side is to do with kharif crops. As we are now progressing, there is good monsoon. Plantings are well ahead of the same time last year and even normal kind of plantings. So we hope to see eventually also more cropping at the end of complete plantation too. But one significant thing that I would like to point out by virtue of a similar engagement that I talked about across our agribusiness networks is that we saw a lot more movement into vegetables and fruits over the last few years because they are high value agriculture, more remunerative for the farmer. But for the first time, we will see this year a reversal of this trend. Anywhere between 10 to 20% drop is what we're hearing from different farmers in different states, because the supply chain disruptions, if they were to continue at the time of Kharif harvest, either because of a recurrence or for increasing COVID incidents, we might have again disruptions of the harvest and sales, and consequently farmers are going for lower risk options of grains and oil seeds and other cereals and pulses than potentially high income vegetables and fruits, because a lower risk is a better choice than potentially shooting for something higher and facing a higher risk. So that is happening this year. And the fifth lens is the government interventions and therefore what happened in the markets. Some of this already covered by Dr. Dalwai in his remarks. I think the almost instant exemption to agriculture and food supply chains from the lockdown was a quick step that the government had taken, because of which we could ramp up as industry and kept the supply chains for the increased demand that I pointed out for household consumption. So that means the supply chains had to remain hyperactive in the lockdown period. And so that happened because the lockdown got exempted. And the subsequent reforms through the 3 ordinances, as well as the infrastructure funds of 1,65,000 crore that he talked about, I think some of them are going to lay a good foundation for building the next round of agriculture system I'll briefly touch upon. And to these exemptions, industry also responded in terms of expanding the purchase centers across the wheat, pulses, and oil seeds buying locations. For example, if you have an e-Chopal procurement center as Chopal Sagar or other locations, typically one could buy in each of these centers about 200 tons of wheat. With the new social distancing norms and other hygiene precautions, the capacity gets restricted to 100 tons. So, but we needed to buy a lot more given the expansion of demand for staples for households. So consequently, we had to multiply the number of purchase centers in rapid time. And so many other companies similarly have responded. And the supply chain innovations I talked about in the midst of disrupting traffic. So all of this kept the commodity markets flowing. So that is a 5 supply chain lenses in terms of what happened to the farmer incomes, the harvesting operations, the transport and supply chain, the kharif planting, and the government interventions and the industry response. So I think all in all, if you have to take, I think the agriculture and food supply chain held up and demonstrated its resilience with the kind of support that came from government and the agility that is shown by the industry, the farmers in particular, and met the consumer demand and remained one of the important, strong sectors of the economy. I think that's the silver lining that one could conclude with. And very briefly, if I have to touch upon what are the implications of all of these on the longer term. While there is nothing fundamentally changing in the longer term, but all of this is going to help accelerate our movement towards it. We were, as already mentioned by Dr. Dalwai, as an economy, agriculture and food economy, we were trying to transform into a demand-responsive production system. See, in the food shortages era, we were primarily producing more to be able to meet the shortages of food. But now with the consumers looking for the kind of variety of food, the quality and nutrition and the convenience and the food safety and many of these features that the consumers are looking for, there needs to be a demand-responsive production system. So that transformation is what India has been at for some time now, and that will only get more accelerated because Indian production system shifts of cropping patterns were not as agile for various reasons as it used to happen in the larger agricultural economies. When such shifts have to happen, it should not be the default shifts like we've just seen in the kharif of lower vegetable production, lower vegetable planting, but more how do you align with the nature of demand that is likely to accrue. So which means it requires, once again, I'll use another 5 highlights in terms of what needs to happen right for making us a lot more demand-responsive production system. One is the very theme of this whole webinar, which is the FPOs, in terms of how do you get the farmers to be able to respond. FPOs have a crucial role to play in building awareness, reaching the demand signals, facilitating the management of crops and the entire capacity to be able to respond. while on a glass half full lens, we can see that the FPO journey, which started now many years ago, nearly 15 years ago, is half full and it is now maturing. The half empty is that in 15 years, we haven't really made much headway. We have still a handful of examples which are lighthouses as to how the FPO should be, not thousands of them which are not. So in the FPO 2.0, so to say, because that is a very critical institution, we have to get it right this time. And therefore, I'm sure this webinar will play an important role in informing all the stakeholders as to what needs to be done. The second element is the role of digital technologies. There is plenty of agri-tech enterprise that is showing promise. We need to get aggregators who will stitch these agri-techs together and deliver them to the FPOs or through the agri-entrepreneurs in the villages. Government will have to look at supporting this with an agri-stack, a digital agri-stack, combining information from the land records, the farmer records, and the soil health cards, and a lot of elements that were built over the recent past can all be components of this digital agri-stack, which will help in scaling. And more importantly, government also has to define an interoperable framework for the whole agri ecosystem so that the 500 different agri-techs and 20 odd aggregators and all of these people can interoperate, much like the Aadhaar, UPI, India stack in the financial system has transformed, and we are able to do digital transactions very seamlessly. Similar kind of a transparency and ease can happen in agri, and that's another important element. The third, already pointed out by Dr. Dalwai, the derivative markets. They have a very important role to play. The demand signals reaching farmer is one part, but actual ability to sell at those prices, to hedge at those prices as the case may be, can happen when the derivative markets are vibrant and functional. The fourth element is food processing industry. Notwithstanding everything, the production times are limited, consumption times are year-round, and therefore to bridge the time element, to also bridge the convenience element, to also bridge the value element, food processing has a critical role to play, and that is the other piece. And I think as part of the funds, the Agri Infrastructure Fund and Animal Husbandry and everything, and also the micro food enterprises that FPOs can leverage, will be a critical bridge between food processing and the farmers. And that is the bit. And the last bit is the focus on exports. We have a headroom of expanding our production at least 30 to 50% in the medium term and doubling in the long term. Now, our domestic consumption cannot absorb this. We have to rely on exports to keep the prices for the farmers remunerative. And when we are aligned to this market, whether it is global or domestic, and exports will play a crucial role. And so these are the 5 elements in transition that we are looking for as part of the next steps. So I thought I'll link up the short-term COVID implications with also the longer-term journey that we are on as a country, and how this COVID will only accelerate in that right direction. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Time for Q&A session, and we'll be taking up there's a bunch of questions from the participants. So I'll be taking them one by one for each of you. And Dr. Dalwai, sir, am I audible to you?
Yeah, very much. Please go ahead.
Okay. So there is a question, and that is regarding the Farmers Produce Trade and Commerce Promotion and Facilitation Ordinance. There are a set of questions. So should I speak out all of them for you, or you would like to take them one by one?
As you feel okay.
Okay, so that's like number 1 is, what are the benefits obtainable by the farmer through this ordinance? The Farmers Produce Trade and Commerce Promotion and Facilitation Ordinance 2020. Second, what is the authority to impose penalty on person who has established and operated electronic trade and transaction platform for contravention of related provisions of ordinance? I think I should take these two first.
Yeah, the biggest advantage of the direct trade ordinance is it offers the farmers an alternate channel. Today, the farmers depend only on the APMCs. Though we have suggested reforms to the APMCs via the 2017 Model Act, whereby we can have more than one APMC at the same place. It could be under the cooperative sector or the private sector, and therefore there'll be competition. We want an alternate channel to APMCs also. As you know, under the direct trade, the advantage is that the farmers can sell their produce right from the farm gate or any aggregation platform. And then it connects the traders from across the country because it allows for intrastate and interstate trade. So the biggest advantage is the fragmented markets of the country now get unified. As I told you earlier, the markets of our country have been divided or fragmented among APMCs, between and among states. So now we create one nation, one market. When we have good agri-logistics in terms of storage and transportation, and in due course of time, seamless transition from road transport to rail and water and air, then we'd be able to actually travel faster, deliver the commodities faster. So that is the biggest advantage, and we'll not get into details and all that. And second, what about the system of levying penalty, etc.? Yes, we'll be coming out with rules for this act. So the rules will mention all the details. For example, the act says there is a redressal mechanism at the administrative level under the sub-collector or the assistant commissioner and the collector. So any dispute between the producers and the traders will be sorted out there. Likewise, for the electronic trade platform, the system of levy of penalty in case of deviation of the norms as laid down there would be mentioned in the rules. So it is the rules that will actually give us the operational part of this. And I'm sure you will soon see all those things. But then just be convinced that the farmers have been for long asking, why are you not allowing me to sell wherever I want to whomever I want to? So the direct trade in that sense provides an opportunity for him to sell wherever he wants to. It could be to an agro processor, it could be a wholesaler, it could be an exporter, or he could go to APMC. And to support both direct trade and APMCs, we have aggregation platforms. Aggregation platforms in the form of farmer producers organizations and in the form of GRAMs, Gramin Agriculture Markets. Because the foundation of a new market architecture is to have large number of aggregation platforms within a radius of 5 to 6 kilometers from the farm gate. From there, we can have more of wholesale trade and marketing that can happen. So this is the advantage. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. There are two additional questions to it. And the first one again is, the ordinance says that a trader has to necessarily make payment to the farmer in such out of mandi trade area transaction within 3 days of delivery of goods. Is there any restriction and payment of market fee, cess or levy for entry of scheduled farmers' produce from trade area of one state to trade area of another state directly by the farmers?
Yeah, now there is absolutely no restriction. The trade zone has been defined as an area that lies outside of the APMCs, outside of any other place notified as an APMC. For example, under the Model APMC Act, we have said that the jurisdiction of the APMCs shall be confined to their boundary walls. As of today, APMCs have jurisdiction either over a taluk or a district as the case may be. So in a sense, they become market zamindars. That means all the commodities had to go only to their market. But now what we said, whatever the APMC, whether under the cooperative sector or under the private sector, or a notified APMC like a warehouse, a silo, a cold store, each of them will have a circumscribed boundary. If the farmer goes there, their rules apply. All other area outside that is a free zone, is a trade zone. And the trade zone does not recognize any boundary, neither the village boundary, nor the taluk, nor the district, nor the state. National jurisdiction it has. So this direct trade, intra-state and interstate trade means that you can move freely from one place to another, and there is no provision for levy of market fee or cess or anything under this Direct Trade Act. Therefore, any trade that happens outside of these notified markets under the State Marketing Act is a free trade, and that's the biggest strength of this. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. We have a bunch of questions on FPOs, and I would like to take the first one with Mr. Siv Kumar. Sir, we have the question which is from one of the participants, and the participant has asked about the process. If you can highlight that if FPO wants to get registered on the commodity exchanges, what is the provision of getting done?
So in fact, NCDX, which is a more sizable agri exchange, and there are a few others also, have their own wings which are hand-holding farmers to walk through the whole registration process. I think the easiest method for them would be to get in touch with the NCDX interface for the FPOs, and not only a simple registration, but they have a whole education awareness building program in terms of what are the operational implications, the risk implications. I think that whole capacity building they can support with beyond the registration. And they can directly transact because any of the exchanges have members who can clear by themselves or operate through traders, stock brokers. They can work through aggregators. And FPO themselves would like to operate like an aggregator, they can register. So I think the hand-holding of exchange would be useful.
Yeah, so there is an additional question to it. How will an FPO withdraw physical delivery from the warehouse?
Yeah, again, as part of the contracts which are trading on the exchanges, you can both deliver as well as lift the physical goods because Indian exchanges, as are a few other exchanges around the world, the attempt is to converge the prices of physical markets with the futures market at the close of the contract date. And therefore, there are certain rules that allow flexibility for people who are delivering after selling. The flexibility gets limited to the people who are lifting goods because one has to manage the perishability aspect of the goods. And accordingly, depending on the stocks, the flexibility for people who are picking stock from there gets limited compared to the suppliers who will have. So there are delivery dates which are applicable. And so FPOs who intend selling in advance at the time of planting or any time during the crop growing season have a choice of delivering or have a choice of settling the contract by reversing the futures rather than delivering. And then if the physical market price are better at that point of time, they can deliver in the physical market and just settle on the futures market. And similarly, if FPOs want to lift material from the warehouses designated by the derivatives market, either because they have a food processing operation within FPO, or they would like to actually do the physical trading activity, And that is the context in which they will probably be lifting from the warehouses. Otherwise, they're better off putting in warehouses which are transferable and negotiable warehousing receipt. There are many more accredited warehouses of that kind rather than the exchange warehouses. Then they can put in those warehouses and then they can simply transfer the electronic receipts. That's a far easier method. But you can certainly lift from the exchange also warehouses, but that will have far more restrictions. So, but it is possible to do that.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. Dalwai, sir, there is a question for you. Is there any chance of linking agribusiness students to FPOs through government policy?
Yeah, see, we can do that. See, now, for example, ICR has an initiative called ARIA, right? Attracting rural youth, right, to agriculture. Then a large number of incubation facilities have been set up. We have incubation facilities run at NARM. Some of the agriculture universities are running. So, and many private incubation centers are coming up. Now under RKVY, we also have allowed funding of the incubation centers. And more importantly, under the RAVE work experience program of 6 months that agriculture universities have, they're supposed to go and experience with different players of agriculture, with farmers, with the agro industries, with officials. So they might as well go and intern with the farmer producers organizations. So there are opportunities, and there is already an institutional mechanism whereby they can actually go and intern. And I'm sure now what can be done is that just as Dr. Agrawal is talking about, promoting industries to go and start picking up students through the placement from the universities, good FPOs can actually start going to the universities because they need professional managers. And under the government scheme, under the FPO guidelines, we have funding for payment also. So professional management is extremely important. The two critical things for any success of FPO is that horizontal cooperation through good understanding. And second one is to run a business enterprise professionally so that vertical integration happens. Farmers will be able to capture higher value only when the FPO is able to integrate vertically and enter into a long range market and try and capture as much value as possible. So I guess the agribusiness students, or people of that background can be good feed for the good FPOs. And I was telling you that we will require in a country at least 30,000 FPOs for a period of time, not just 10,000. Whole field is open now. And how to sustain them, that has to come from research-based, academic-based inputs from academia and also, of course, industry. So it is there.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. There is this interesting question from one of the participants, and that is regarding the challenges that are being faced before if someone wants to establish or create an FPO, and someone is finding that information, like when you want to communicate to the farmer, how in the simplest form, how to communicate with the farmer. So maybe Shiv Kumar sir, you can bring up your own experiences to share how to convince the farmer to form an FPO.
See, basically, I think there needs to be a understanding of the context of the farmer. The idea is not to farm FPO for the sake of FPO, either because of the broader understanding that being together helps a small farmer, or just because there is some special financial aid from the government. It cannot be that kind of a broader reason, but every context in a micro region for a set of farmers are different. So whoever is engaged and are intending to catalyze formation of FPOs first must understand the context of the group there, and which is where, when you say farmer interest group that Dalwai talked about, in whatever name it is called, what is that common interest? Is it a collective knowledge related to a particular crop? Is it because their sales, they are getting a much lower realization because each one's individual volume are smaller, or a similar thing on the purchase of input side? Is it because of common practices, like in some villages where we are engaged in FPOs? Is simply because unless all the farmers follow a common practice, it does not benefit anybody. In case of chilies, for example, when a farmer would like to improve the quality of chili through IPM practices and keep lower pesticide residue, one farmer following doesn't help, because next door farmer, if he or she is applying pesticide, it will seep through the soil. Therefore, such people would prefer that our entire set of farmers in the vicinity would want to follow such practices. So what exactly is the need, or a combination of these, that is going to help if we come together? So what is that binding glue? So that is the starting point. Then what is that which is really going to make that happen? Is it a certain investment in a warehouse, or is it certain understanding? Because I've seen that in some earlier cases when we are working with some FPOs, simplest form of using farmers' own weighing machine was good enough to make a difference to improve their realization by 15%. Because there was a lot of cheating on the weight that was happening when it was being done on the traders' weighing scale. So what is the context because of which what intervention might help? So I think that understanding will show, and that's how you can demonstrate value to the farmer. And when farmers see that here is our common understanding, then they can come together. Quite often, it's like a brainstorming session among the farmers that farmers themselves can produce. In fact, as we form e-Chopals, many of them are not necessarily FPOs, but they are virtual aggregation of farmers. So instead of a physical aggregation, so what we used to do is that we produced a half-an-hour feature film, like a story, a complete self-sufficient episode, where a farmer goes through the difficulties of producing and selling crop, and then goes to a neighboring village of a relative where e-Chopal is operating, and sees that farmer who has gone through the ease of transactions in that village of producing to selling. So we use that half-an-hour film and show to a bunch of 50, 60 farmers who are assembling in a new village where we were to form, and then say that, you know, this is the context, which is a hypothetical context. In your own village, what do you think are the issues? How can you benefit if a e-Chopal is set up here? And then you hear a number of episodes, stories, anecdotes as to where are they facing problems and how are they seeing the benefit potentially if somebody can come and set up in e-Chopal there. So it's much like a case discussion in your classroom. Some of you are MBA classes, and some of them, of course, even in agriculture, one has a case method of teaching. So it is like you show a case of half an hour and then have a 2-hour discussion where all the farmers participate and brainstorm and suggest what are the issues, what are the challenges, and how can they benefit. So I think that is the kind of an approach. It is understanding the context and then figuring out a way to see as to where does this fit in, rather than just doing for the sake of doing. Then I think it is possible to form FPOs with the right earnest cause.
Completely agree with you, sir. Thank you so much. Before we close, I have 2 questions each for you. And to begin with, I would just ask Dr. Dalwai sir first. So the question is, will India move towards policies that reduce its dependence on imports, a measure to improve their capacity to respond to eventual future crises? I think that's amid the rising COVID challenge that someone is asking for.
Yeah, see, one thing, please remember, the meaning of Atmanirbhar is not protectionism. It is self-reliance. Simultaneously, what does it mean? It means that we build such robust supply chains that we are able to actually connect with the world. I think the era of protectionism is over. I talked to you about free trade. We can't have free trade within a limited boundary. We can't have within a district or state or even a country. Yes, we should be self-reliant, particularly in respect of strategic commodities. For example, food is a strategic input requirement. Similarly, in military warfare, there are certain strategic stuff. When it comes to food per se, we must build our strategic protection in terms of both food and nutrition so that we are able to cater to the demographic requirements. And simultaneously, India should aim at becoming the superpower in agriculture. The reason is that we have the strength. We have very high extent of cultivable land, 141 million hectares. Very few nations have this extent. We have 60 types of soils in our country. We've got 20 agroclimatic zones, which means that we can grow a lot of varieties, lot of segments and sub-segments. And if we want our farmers, because all said and done in future also, unlike Western countries, in India with such huge number of people, a lot of people will continue to depend upon agriculture. You can't have a comparable situation like that of USA, UK, where 3 or 4% depend on agriculture. We will have a lot of people continue to depend. And continued dependence on any sector of economy, it means gainful employment. So our agriculture policies must aim at generating gainful employment. And gainful employment will come provided we are able to find good markets. And that markets will come from two policy reforms. One is territorial expansion, that is a direct trade, creating one nation, one market. Second one is functional expansion. Functional expansion means our market is just not food, but it is also for non-food. That means energy sector. It is for non-food processing, pharmaceuticals, for example, nutraceuticals. A lot of industries are there where agriculture can feed the raw materials. It can feed the intermediate goods. So when you have that kind of functional expansion of markets, then we'll find markets for our agriculture. So we will have to have territorially national boundaries and global market. That is a new part, is another important component of the new market architecture. And please remember, you need functional expansion. The growth of agriculture, resilience of agriculture will depend upon the ability to find continuously new markets by generating new demand. Just as an entrepreneur in industry continuously differentiate his products to sell his commodities. Likewise, our farmers have been taught and facilitated to continuously grow new kinds of commodities that will meet the new demands. And I firmly believe that the future economy will depend not just on fossil-based resources. It will depend upon the raw produce generated on the farms. It is very unfortunate that India has not utilized it. Even Malaysia, Thailand, they have 30% of their agricultural, of their manufactured value coming from agriculture. Why is India not processing? Why are we not doing it? Because even today with low level of processing, the number of people engaged in food processing is as high as 5.9 million. And at a very low percentage. Imagine just we start processing so much that we grow, will create more jobs, more industries, more incomes. That is the purpose of agriculture. Not just growing and feeding mouths of the people or the cattle. We need to feed the mouths of industries, of the energy sector. So our new policies will be all aiming at expansion of territories, integration over time and space, and of course the horizon of market, the meaning of market has to change. So all your research, I think all agriculture economists, business managers, just see how you can now start looking at giving a new orientation to agriculture. Please stop talking about Annadata. It's no more, yes, he's Annadata, a very respectful word for him. But then I think we need to give him new businesses, treat him as a businessman. Our FPOs should be treated as enterprises. Like in Europe, for example, they have got a threshold. And any producers organization with a turnover of 50 million euros annually is called as a small and medium enterprise. Anything up to 2 million euros is called a micro enterprise. So now you must suggest to us what should be that turnover threshold to treat a particular farmer producers organization as a enterprise, so that they become eligible under the MSME segment for assistance. So why MSME means they should also include food processing, non-food processing. I'm just making a loud thinking a little elaborately to tell you that we now need to start looking at agriculture in different format. It is agribusiness, right from input to output management. Farmer producers organization, because all the time we've been saying that farmers are too small and therefore they can't invite the scales of economy. Otherwise, at the individual farms level, all experiments by agriculture economists show that the productivity is much higher than in a large farm because of personal care. But volume of trade is small because the volume of production is small. That means the farmer is capable of growing. Now we must enable him to convert that into money by bringing them together, mobilizing farmers, aggregating the produce. So he becomes a part of that, as I told in the food supply chain, he becomes a foundation. He is able to leverage the bargaining power at both input management stage and the output management stage. So it's all start looking at it as a business, an enterprise. So all our policies, if you see, right from 2000 onwards, they're all towards that. I did not recount a large number of policies for want of time. For example, export policy of 2019. What does it try to aim at? What do we, when we say that we want 22,000 number of grams, what are we trying to say? Or when you want 10,000 FPOs, what are we trying to say? Or when you want contract farming, what are we trying to say? All these are all towards that new kind of an approach. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Yes, the government initiatives to turn agriculture into agribusiness enterprise are laudable, and we believe that it will take us in the right direction. Siv Kumar, sir, there is another question, I think, from the CSR perspective. You can very well explain that. How should we support farmers and farmers organizations in the pandemic situation to protect these farmers and prevent the health crisis turning out into a food crisis?
So I think basically any segment of the economy, including farmers, the primary protection from contact based challenge of COVID is what one needs to take care. So in terms of ensuring personal hygiene, that whole awareness in terms of social distancing. So I think these aspects need to be widely covered in terms of awareness building and enabling of making the masks available and making the soaps and sanitizers available. And so I think that is a precaution. That is one aspect. I think fortunately, because they are less dense spaces compared to cities, the risk of the spreading of the virus is relatively less, but there are occasions. That's where, for example, APMC market yards would have been one high risk area. And that's where wherever now the APMC started operating or other auction centers started operating. So all of them, when they are following these kind of precautions, the incidence again is less. So this is one aspect. The second is that where the labor has moved away. Accelerated adoption of farm equipment is one that I already pointed out in my remarks in terms of how quickly states like Punjab and Haryana are adopting direct seeding of rice in this season. The local universities have helped in the local machine manufacturers to produce a lot more simpler machines to work at that point of time. And similarly, we are seeing adoption of spraying and all that through drone-based experiments also expanding. So adoption of equipment and machinery in much faster pace where people have moved out is one. Where people have moved back into states like Bihar, Eastern UP, Odisha, and many of these places where the labor has reverse migrated. We need to do two things there. And one is, of course, how do we, in the journey of making agriculture an enterprise, a demand responsive production system, in all of that, and a knowledge-based businesses, what role can we provide to many of these people who moved back? Many of them are relatively more educated, understand machines and all of that. So therefore, how do we make use of their capabilities and creating livelihood opportunities? Because again, surveys point out that a quarter to a third of these people would like to stay back in their villages and not go back to where they were employed till recently. I mean, of course, as things improve, we might see some of that changing, but I think we must again use this as an opportunity to create farming services. I talked about agri entrepreneurs supporting the digital agri ecosystem. FPOs also require various employees beyond the farmers to take care of FPO as a business. Local micro food enterprises will require people. So how do we create off-farm, near-farm activities for people who moved back as well as other educated people there, and creating livelihood opportunities there and making agriculture as knowledge business is another important step. And then, of course, the expanded budgets of NREGA are also absorbing and ensuring that more income generating opportunities. And when they are focused on asset creation for the farms, whether it is the things like farm ponds and local roads for connecting to the markets. So many of these asset construction activities is where some of these labor get deployed there. Now we have nearly 1 lakh crores allocated now with near doubling of NREGA. So that is the other. So I think making use of many of these would be the basis for us to, I don't think we are really anywhere pointing toward that direction that because of this pandemic, we are likely to see a food crisis. I think that resilience is already demonstrated in the height and peak of the pandemic. And I think this gave enough time to build the awareness and the capacity to deal with this. And I think whatever little bit we might see as we go forward, I think I'm confident we should be able to deal with that in the village also.
Very well said, sir. Thank you so much.
Dr. Itana, just one question. You have something?
Yes, sir, please.
Please continue.
Yeah, please, you can take first question.
Sir, Dalwai sir, there is one question out of my curiosity to both of you, particularly to Dalwai sir. Sir, we also have done some work in this area of FPOs, ENAMs, and that kind of things. And we are living this town of Amul. So this, we know you concluded in your presentations, many perspectives are there, particularly for researchers. And we have also noted down a few of them. We need to enter in those areas to conduct some research. Yes, you are giving new perspective, maybe new direction, or maybe orientation to agriculture, whole agriculture. But my question is towards FPO kind of things. We have some models like Amul model, well-tested, time-tested model over the years. Maybe the Varna model, maybe the Mahagraves model. At least 8 to 10 models in our country are such models which can be replicated. The problem is why these models have not been replicated. This is one point. And second point in the background of this thing, sir, you concluded that FPOs are a kind of win-win situation. It's not only farmers, but in the supply chain, there are some other stakeholders also. The point is, when we have a holistic model like Amul, which has procurement, processing, marketing, trade, and everything. So this is a good thing to replicate it in other than Amul. Maybe there may be vegetables or the fruits or other kind of things, sir. Why it is not happening? And some people are coming to us. So why it is not? Now Amul is taking some steps. Maybe in the North Gujarat, they have started something there, though it is nothing on concrete level, sir. But I think what you feel, this is very, very important point. If already we have time-tested model, these models, why there is no replication? Whether government, second is whether government can do something, facilitate this thing with some initial assistance to these models like Amul, sir. Sir, please.
No, I couldn't agree with you more that it is ironical that India, which is home to one of the most successful models of cooperatives, built on agriculture value system, involving the poorest sections of the society, the discriminated gender, we fail to learn or replicate those lessons in the non-milk sector. The difference between Green Revolution and White Revolution is this, that Green Revolution focused upon production and assumed that there is a market. White Revolution did not assume that. Two questions that Dr. Kurian always asked was, is there a market for my milk? Second, is there a better rate for my milk? That means you're not talking just about a sale price, but you're talking about a remunerative sale price. And that's how he was able to build an entire value chain, a very efficient value chain, which focused on production and post-production. So I think we had a lot to learn from that. For some reason, we did not do it. One thing was because in the Green Revolution, we had a natural market initially. It was only after 1980s that the surpluses began to be generated. And another thing was, Green Revolution was commodity specific. It was more around wheat and paddy. And unfortunately, the procurement became so strong that we did not think that market forces must be strengthened. So there have been some mistakes. However, the good point is that there are many successful projects in India. And many of these things have been driven by visionary leaders, cooperatives in agro-processing. Let us say sugar, for example, oil seeds, even dairy itself. There have been many successful stories. And those cooperative agro-processing centers have actually created business environment and generated employment for a lot of people in the rural sector. So it's not that we are not succeeded, but I think what is now required is to create smaller farmer producers organizations. You know, NDDB or Amul is a very large one. It is a cooperative. So one of the basic principles of farmer producers organization is, on the foundations of farmers interest group, we have a federated farmer producers organization, and we expect that these FPOs will start confederating with other FPOs. They'll build confederations at regional level, state level, even global level. We need to facilitate that. So it is possible, but always two things, that how do we make people to realize that there is a value in it? How do we make people to realize that we shall not do just because money is available? Many of the FPOs are not succeeded in the last 10 years only because they thought that, okay, we'll get a matching grant if we give a certain share capital. As long as that is the be all and end all of it, we cannot move forward. When you ask Sahyadri Vilash Sindhe, you'll always tell you, we did not depend upon government.
Yeah.
As Shivkumarji was saying, they recognize the problems of the farmers, address the problems of the farmers. So likewise here, I think when we form FPOs, an internal champion should be able to diagnose what the problems are, place it before the farmers, and tell them whether they would like to find solutions to that. And take government support only as a bonus. Okay, so I think we can do it. Whether, and just as we've done in the most perishable commodity, milk, we can now go to the next perishable sector like fruits and vegetables. Safal, for example, is a fairly good example of what Amul has, diverted from milk to other segments. Our hubcoms in Bangalore, where they have tried to organize retail outlets for the fruits and vegetables by linking with the hinterland of fruits and vegetable growers. So there have been many successes. Now, I think our youngsters, our youth today, I'll tell you that I think there's a time for everything. Today in our country, the aspirations have grown. Earlier, my generation was looking for jobs in government. Some brighter people like Mr. Kumar look for jobs in the private sector. More risk-taking and more unconventional, right? But today we have moved from that also to people wanting to become entrepreneurs. Now government is now trying to create that ease of doing business, removing all these checks and etc., etc. Lesser tariff, easier movement, easier exports, etc. That will facilitate our youngsters to start building enterprises. I think the youth today in 21st century is much more capacitated than what all of us were before them. Their mindset is very different. I think what government has to do or the society has to do is to create that facilitative environment. And I can foresee that all your agriculture graduates, particularly with agribusiness background, imagine there's so much of opportunity today to transform by becoming builders of FPOs, building how to use waste, agriculture waste, how to aggregate agriculture waste, how to convert that into commodities, different kinds of commodities. 780 million tons of agri-produce, means non-consumable agri-produce, what is called residue. 780 million tons. We're just talking about 290 million tons of food grains. I think we have been blind, we have turned a Nelson's eye because of old blinkers. So I guess the new form of education that all of you are imparting will be able to open the eyes of our youngsters to become entrepreneurs, and that they have that opportunity in agriculture. Today's youth wants to be tech savvy. They want to be more doing capital intensive, tech intensive, management oriented jobs. Jobs means building enterprise, and all of that opportunity is there in 21st century. So I think, I'm sure we'll see this, this thing grow up now. We'll see this certainly grow up, okay? And let's all facilitate that through continuous orientation, education, advocacy, and of course, continued reforms at the policy level. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. It's great, sir. We have learned many things from you, sir. And we'll try to use these things, these advices from your sides, both of you, through our classroom as well as outside that, sir. Thank you, sir. Yeah, Ritambra, please.
Thank you so much, sirs. The audience is really overwhelmed as we keep receiving more and more questions, and therefore I request you, the audience, please, that we will be responding to all of your questions via email, and we have further more sessions also. So once again, I would like to thank both of you, sirs, for a wonderful session today, and I hope that this cooperation, the professional cooperation will exist in the future as well. We will look forward to your guidance and will need it in the future. So with this, I again extend a warm thanks to both of you. Thank you so much. There is a small announcement for the audience that we will be assembling back at 3 o'clock for the webinar. We have two, again, very wonderful speakers, Dr. Sukhpal Singh from IIM Ahmedabad and Dr. Raman Janayolu from Center for Sustainable Agriculture, Secunderabad, with us, and they will be delivering on FPOs. So with this, thank you so much. Have a happy time at lunch. Thank you.
you very much. Thank you, Ritambara. Thank you, Dr. Pundir.
Thank you.
And nice meeting you, Shivkumarji, again.
Yeah, pleasure meeting you too. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, sir.